The United States it's under attack. That's the easiest way to explain it. Even CNN is now covering this insane video showing a massive wave of criminal aliens attacking the Texas National Guard. Attacking them. Tearing down the barricades, setting fires, and storming their way to the U.S. border. It's an invasion. At this point, it's undeniable. I mean, you've got Democrats and Republicans now saying these things on TV. And now you have actual video of these criminal aliens, these non-Americans attacking Texas National Guard. Call it whatever you want. It's getting nuts. We got to talk about this and show what's going on, because I don't think anybody is going to like what comes next due to Joe Biden's incompetence or his willful acts of allowing this to happen. Because the next thing that happens is it's going to get ugly. It's already gotten ugly. I just don't want it to get any uglier. But the fact that our National Guard are standing there armed and ready, that's where things are getting crazy. Texas deployed armed National Guard to the border to stop the invasion, and now they're being attacked. So what do you think happens next? I certainly hope it doesn't come to that. But the only way I don't know what you do at this point. There's no law. There's nothing you can do to stop these people who are attacking our country. It's not like in the United States you can say deploy the police. We've already deployed the National Guard. CBP did nothing. We've got National Guard from Texas on the border. Perhaps the only thing we can do at this point is deploy more National Guard or the Army. I think any sane country would deploy their army to defend their border. The problem is the people who are attacking our National Guardsmen or Texas National Guardsmen, you're not going to tell them what they can or can't do. They are not subject to your laws. They are an attacking outside force. It's already gotten scary. I don't even know what to say. We're going to talk about that. Plus, Letitia James has apparently made moves to seize Trump's golf resort in New York and to seize other assets of his. Trump has issued a statement saying, keep your filthy hands off of my assets. Man, it's getting crazy out there. We're going to talk about that. We got a whole lot more to talk about. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com. Pick up your coffee, because Cast Brew is our coffee company and we sponsor ourselves. Of course, Appalachian Nights is everybody's favorite, but I'm going to have to ask you to please buy other coffee from us, because, it's like we got this one-hit wonder over here with Appalachian Nights. It's selling too well that now sales of other coffees are slowing down and all anybody wants is Appalachian Nights. I'm very, very happy that it's selling so well, but Stand Your Ground is also very delicious. So why don't you consider it? Plus, we have the Re-Rise with Roberto Jr., which is, of course, the limited edition from Halloween, which we had to order 5,000 bags. I didn't think we were going to sell them all out, but that's like a one-time thing only. And then, of course, Mr. Boca's Pumpkin Spice Experience. This will be the last run. Once those bags are gone, they have a little picture of Mr. Boca's on it. There will never be another Mr. Boca's Pumpkin Spice Experience, so get them while you can. But also head over to timcast.com, click Join Us, become a member to support our work directly, and you'll get access to our Discord servers. The most important thing, it's where you can join a community of like-minded individuals, or maybe not, but you can argue with them if you don't get along. But you can network. You can build community. You can talk to people. And that's what we need to do to build this parallel economy. You're also supporting our show as a member, and you get access to our uncensored members-only show. So that's coming up tonight at 10 p.m. Smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and everything else is Harrison Smith.
Howdy, Harrison Smith. I'm the host of American Journal on InfoWars each and every weekday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. at Infowars.com/show and band.video and Rumble and X and wherever else we stream. You can follow me on Twitter at Harrison H. Smith. Thanks for having me on, Tim.
Thanks for hanging out. We got Hannah Claire.
Hey, I'm Hannah Claire Brumlow. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. It's Scanner News. I'm happy to be back. And of course, Ian's here.
Hi. Thanks. I was just getting my microphone. Almost forgot my microphone.
Sorry, you want me to filibuster for a minute here?
Yeah, keep going. What's up, everybody? Good to see you. Day number 2, being back. I like it. I was going to say something. I'm drinking Appalachian Nights right now. Appalachian Nights, pardon me.
Good.
I went to the cupboard and just grabbed the first one I saw, and it turned out it was the most delicious. Well, theoretically. I mean, this is guess what the audience says.
Appalachian Nights, we just can't keep in stock.
So freaking good. I put peanut butter powder in it and coconut water, and it's like a milkshake. It is delicious.
Look, I'm a middle child. I think you should buy the middle child of coffee, which is Stand Your Ground. It's great. It's doing its best.
I'll try that tomorrow.
Yeah, you promise?
Thank you. Yes. Serge.
Yeah,
you look great today, man.
Thanks, bro. Maybe my cool earbuds. Nice. They're next show on today. Anyways, I'm Serge.com. Let's get into it, Tim.
Here's the first story. CNN reports new video shows migrants rushing portion of border fence. They tried very, very hard to tone this one down. But in this video, You have people who are not citizens of this country wearing masks and gloves and glasses, and they are setting fires, tearing down barricades, and attacking Texas National Guardsmen. I don't think we would just call that rushing a portion of the fence. If, like, I don't know, 100 people came to your house and started banging on your doors and then kicked your door in, knocked you down, and ran into your house, we would call that a home invasion.
Yeah, or a riot.
A home invasion. Breaking into your house. If they were outside your house screaming and banging, we'd call it a riot. If the criminal aliens were outside the fence screaming, we'd say there is a riot at the border. But when they begin attacking National Guardsmen, ripping down fences and starting fires, and then storm their way in, we call that an invasion.
Last night I was like, what's the difference between an invasion and an attack? Because some invasions are not attacks. They'll just be like people with no weapons. They just come and they settle, and they're not supposed to be there, but so they're invading the territory. This kind of looks like an attack. They rip down the thing, they knock guys out of the way, and they run past them.
Let's pull up the video here. We'll play it for you right now.
So they didn't attack the cops. They weren't like there to hurt they were there to get past the cops. But they're attacking the gate.
They're attacking the National Guard. This is a statement of fact.
This is the step before where you would be like they come with weapons kind of attack. Like
they already have weapons.
We
already have photographs of these people carrying rifles on the border in the Rio Grande. Already that issue exists, and already Congress. What happened with that bill where they were trying to get approval for the National Guard to open fire on armed criminal aliens? Do you remember that?
I thought it died in committee, but I could be wrong.
Maybe
do
it
they
did.
not already
That's why I'm
have the
asking,
right
what
to do
happened
that?
to
What
it?
the hell? Well, maybe not just armed foreigner but
I think the question is,
if they brandish, then
should
maybe.
we poll the people and ask them, do we send troops to Ukraine or do we send troops to the border? Because I would think that I would want to support the Texas National Guard on a federal level, keeping people from invading the country, you know? But instead you have outlets like CNN using the term rush, like they want it to be comparable to the Travis Scott concert where people rushed the stage and got crushed. Like, oh, it's a terrible tragedy, but it's an anomaly. I mean, the thing is the border is becoming increasingly chaotic. It's been chaotic for a really long time, and it's putting even more pressure on the states to do anything. I mean, this is happening at Texas because Texas is fighting back. We should look at what's happening in New Mexico, California, Arizona, where they're governed by Democratic governors who would not say go to the border and defend it. They'd say just let them in. Seems crazy to me.
Well, it's definitely going to get worse in the short term because, you know, over the winter, immigration always slows down, and this is the first of the spring surge, as they call it. So it's only going to get worse. And who knows, next time it may be 1,000, maybe 10,000 people trying to cross. And, you know, it's tough because the guards themselves, they know what would happen if they actually fought back in a real way, if they actually used the guns that they're holding. It's like they both know that nothing's going to happen. The migrants know they're not going to be stopped, and the guardsmen know if they actually open fire on people literally attacking and storming our border, they're going to be crucified by the Biden administration.
Fox News, February 3rd, 2024, Republican bill would give National Guard lethal force powers to repel armed invaders at border. So this is specifically, several photos have come out showing that some of these individuals, look, the cartels are running these human trafficking operations. And so they have rifles. Numerous videos show this. A Republican bill, I'm assuming, you may be correct, and it died. This is over a month ago. Probably died in committee. But this is where things get, these are getting dangerous and scary. I mean, I shouldn't say getting, we're here. We are off the edge. The precipice, we've gone right over it. My friends, we are already at the point where we know millions of non-citizens have stormed through the border. The Biden administration has done nothing. You've got squatters taking over homes. The police are siding with the squatters. You've got from an invasion now to armed groups leading human trafficking operations and a wave of men. These are all men wearing gloves and glasses and masks to protect their identities. And they're attacking National Guard, setting fire. Look, let me pull up some of these photos. We have this from the Daily Mail. They're setting fire to our barricades, setting fire. This is an attack from outside the country on the borders of this country. Any sane, normal nation deploys its military to protect its border from an outside force, destroying its barricades, seeking to break its way into the country in violation of that country's laws. We currently have only the Texas National Guard doing anything about it, and even they are just standing there as they get attacked, and they do nothing.
I don't know what the legality about calling for violence is. You're not supposed to call for violence. That's general civility. You do not call for violence. But when it's wartime and someone attacks your country like Osama bin Laden, everyone was calling for that guy's head. We were calling for violence against Osama bin Laden. It was normal. If people are attacking your country, what do you do? What are you supposed to do? Like, please defend my country. What?
Yeah. It's honestly sad that there has to be a bill to, legalize lethal force when you have people crossing with weapons. Sort of the most crazy thing about this whole story is that all of the guys there, one of them got arrested for attacking the National Guard. One of them, 743 of them were sent to the processing center and maybe in a city near you by this time tomorrow.
Arrested means brought into the country.
Well, all I know is one person was arrested for charges of actually attacking a guardsman.
Right.
But
where do they bring that person they arrested?
Well, I don't know. That might be different, but everybody else.
I don't think they drove them into
was just
Mexico to a
sent
Mexican jail.
No, certainly not.
So when they arrest them, they bring them into the country.
Could be, but either way, there was more than one guy attacking the National Guard there, and only one of them got arrested, and the 743 others were sent to a processing center, which does just mean being brought into the country, put on a bus or an airplane.
There is no United States.
Of this group.
Texas at this point is functionally sovereign.
Yeah.
The federal government has abandoned its duty in the Constitution to defend states from invasion.
Oh, it's worse than that. They're actively working against it. I mean, this will be used as an excuse to start flying more people in, right? They flew in 300,000 migrants to avoid the chaos at the border. So this will be used as an excuse to go, well, it's too dangerous for you to actually go to the border. Why don't you hop on a plane in Guadalajara and we'll just, fly you to St. Louis.
Never mind the fact that we could insist that they try to get here legally. We'll just help them aid and abet people who are entering our country illegally.
Right. And
Makes great sense. I love it.
Where these people are from, who brought them here. There were women and children with them. They were separated and put into a different group. And these were the men that, they were impatient. They just didn't want to, wait to get across. I mean, nothing was going to stop them. They just had to be patient for a day or two. They would have been brought in anyway, but I guess that was too much to ask. They had to,
if
attack
they're
people.
Thirsty and it's hot.
Well, no. They wouldn't be brought in. This is Texas. The Texas National Guard has been repelling almost all of these people. We went from thousands per day, and then we had a couple of journalists who were down at the border, and I said, what's it at now? And they're like 4 or 5. And I was like, 4 or 5,000? No, like 4 or 5. The Texas National Guard has effectively stopped. So what you were seeing with those barricades, those are Texas barricades they put on the border, and then the official federal border fence is where they get and start banging on the fencing.
The wall seemed to work, actually.
And the wall, imagine if there was no wall there.
They would have kept running. They would have just plowed through National Guard and kept running into the country.
This is not the first time this has happened.
That's why we wanted the wall.
Yep.
But they all got brought in. I mean, all 740, they were sent to a processing center, so they'll be, spread throughout the country. So, I mean, they weren't stopped, essentially. They were allowed.
I think it is fair to say at this point that, maybe it's the forest and the trees analogy or whatever, but I don't know how right now you make an argument for a functional United States of America when the Supreme Court, what just happened? It goes from you can't enforce the bill. A few months go by. Okay, indefinite stay on your ability to enforce the bill. The next day, okay, you can enforce the bill. Lower court says, you know what? We're rescinding our opinion. Therefore, the Supreme Court is moot. It goes back to the lower court. You can no longer enforce your bill. There's not even an understanding between the districts, the federal districts, and the Supreme Court as to who gets to say what even happens at this point.
They call that being lost in the shuffle. There's too much bureaucracy in this country. If you can't solve this the day it happens, there's too much bureaucracy. We need more local control.
When you are at the point where millions of non-citizens are storming your border every day, the federal government says it's good and protects it, telling the public the opposite. We want to do something about it, but we can't. Oh, our hands are tied. We can't do it. Then when Texas, the state principally affected by this, says we will send our own National Guard, the federal government took action to stop Texas from enforcing the law. I don't see how you can claim there can be a claim of a country. I mean, we can go over a million different scenarios of double standards in law. At a certain point, you have to recognize there's no law.
Right.
When you have Capitol Police hunting down little old ladies who bumbled their way into the Capitol, not talking about the rioters, and then you have federal law enforcement doing literally nothing about the far left that firebombed buildings, and DC actually paid out millions of dollars to Antifa, that's not law. You people call it anarcho-tyranny. I'm like, it's none of these things. It is just criminal cartel operations, stealing what power they can because the system has collapsed a long time ago.
Yeah, well, it's selective enforcement of the law, which is in a lot of ways worse than no law at all. I mean, if there was no law, you'd have Texans just going and defending their own border, but we know how that would work out because it's happened.
I do not think it's fair to say it's selective enforcement of the law. And selective enforcement of the law is when a cop decides to pull you over and not the guy next to you. You were both speeding, but he says, I'm going to pull this guy over because I don't like the way he looks. Selective enforcement of the law. When the law is only applied against particular people, it's technically correct. But at this point, I'm like, no, look, when a gang in the south side of Chicago goes around attacking another neighborhood, we don't call it selective gang attacks. We say gangs attack their enemies.
No, but they still use the law as a weapon. They just don't use it against people that they want to allow to, invade, and they'll ruthlessly apply it to people who storm the Capitol or anything like that.
Which is why I think it's time to break from the lighthearted rhetoric of selective enforcement of the law. No, I think there's rogue government actors operating as a criminal gang targeting their political opponents, including the front runner for the presidency.
Exactly.
Selective enforcement of the law is when everyone is speeding and the cop decides to pull you over. Selective enforcement of the law is when the cop says, you know what, I'm not going to pull anyone over today. It's when they choose to apply the law or not. But when the federal government is targeting one class of people, including the president, I would just call that a rogue state.
Sure. No, I mean,
I think
they're clearly at war with us. I mean, the federal government, I mean, this is desired. This was not unexpected. This was not, an accident. They probably don't like the look of it. But like I said, they'll still, turn this around and say, see, this is why we need to expedite the process, or this is why we need to fly people in and not have them at the border. So we don't have this bad look here. But the federal government is at war with the people, essentially.
If Trump loses, this will be every day. If Trump wins, we can only cross our fingers that he does something about it.
Well, the other thing is, if he wins and the left starts rioting, you now have colonies of illegal immigrants inside major cities, in the Chicago airport or in these encampments, literal colonies that the American government has built for them. You don't think they're going to join in on the rioting? You don't think they'd want to get in on that a little bit? So, I mean, we're in for a very troubling second half of the year.
This is insane to watch. The U.S. border is literally being attacked. And what the left is going to argue, they're going to play the argument of escalation. No. Attack would be if they had guns. No. If a guy breaks into your liquor store and he steals from you, he has committed a robbery. If a guy goes in with a gun, you can call it aggravated robbery. It's all still a crime of an attack on the person, theft, robbery, etc. This is the entry-level attack. They set fires, they tore down barricades, and they physically attacked National Guard. They are operating under they have their hands up, wearing gloves and masks. They don't want anyone to see their faces because they do want to get released into your town. And they also know that the attack vector today, based on mass media, is play the victim, break your way in, and if anyone retaliates against you, they're the oppressor, they're the aggressor, and you win.
I just want to know how many people who were processed immediately turned around and said, well, I'm seeking asylum. I'm from a violent country. I have some reason to be here, right? Because they know all you have to do is vaguely mention asylum, and the U.S. government right now is like, well, come on in and wait. Hang out. Come back for your court date. We know you will, for sure.
In a couple years, maybe they'll get a court date. But not only do they know that, they're being trained on it. I mean, they're given cards that say, here's what you say. Like, it's a magic word. Like, it's open sesame. And by saying the words, I'm fleeing violence, you get a free pass into the country. And then Tyson Foods will hire you and pay for your lawyer to argue that you're an asylum seeker. It's all deliberate. It's all a plan. This is, a process that there is no end in sight. I mean, if we don't stop it, if there isn't serious action taken to stop this process going forward, there's no reason why there wouldn't be a billion people coming in over the borders forever.
National divorce, I don't think it matters if you want it or not. I think at this point, it's an inevitability. I mean, I don't know if that will stand tomorrow. There's many variables in front of us. But we're at the point now where Texas keeps getting pushed into a corner where they're going to have to decide to take their own enforcement actions. They've already done this. SB 4 would allow them to arrest and deport. Mexico says we refuse. Texas is going to say, we don't care. Mexico can't take action against an individual state, so Mexico can do nothing about it because Mexico will be forced to go to the federal government. The federal government will say, we've tried to stop Texas. Texas is going to say, you can't stop us because we're defending our state and you're in violation of the law, creating this weird circuitous problem where eventually Mexico just says, then we are coming after you, Texas. And then what? Mexico invades? They can't do that. So this just means Texas will eventually solidify a heavy sovereignty, and we'll see other states start doing the same. It's only a matter of time before states like West Virginia start saying, and Florida's already doing this with every major story that breaks about, say, squatting or the Haitian migrants. Florida is right on top of it. We are dangerously close to Florida eventually saying we are going to begin our own deportation process in much the same way as Texas. The federal government can't do anything about it.
I mean, honestly, we just need to get rid of the asylum rule. Like, it sucks. I like the idea that America is here as a safe harbor for people that are actually fleeing real persecution. But I mean, if you're running a charity where there's people who just come up and go, oh yeah, I totally have cancer, give me money, eventually you're going to run out of, like, you can't let that happen continuously. We can't have these rules anymore. I would love if Texas would just go, you know what? We don't do asylum anymore. It doesn't matter if you're claiming it. It doesn't matter if you say you're fleeing people. It's been taken advantage of by bad actors. If you're sad that we no longer have asylum, take it up with them, because we can't just let anybody into our country. I would love to see Texas take more serious action against this, and really like put the ball in the federal government's court and go, you don't like us doing this? Come do something about it, because right now Texas is sort of capitulating quite a bit.
Do you think there is a way for Texas to come out and say we're stopping asylum? Because again, love them or hate them, I know CNN is going to spin this as Texas is anti-asylum. You know what I mean?
Right.
It would be difficult to be the first state to come out as anti-humanitarian aid, but I think you're completely right. The system is abused.
What if they just refer to themselves as a sanctuary state, but it's a sanctuary for American citizens?
To keep spinning it, maybe.
Yeah, well, but hey, the sanctuary state is another good concept, right? Because that essentially means that you are not complying with, deportation orders, which is, again, a violation of the law. So it would be the same thing, just on the opposite,
Not
face.
complying with importation orders.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what CNN would say about it. They would lie about it anyway. But yeah, because it also connects to the squatters' rights thing, where we have these laws about squatters' rights, ostensibly to stop landlords from being abusive, or to provide some fair way for things to be settled, where you don't have landlords or people using violence to get people out. We have these laws that are sort of predicated on the idea that everybody respects them and that everybody is genuine and cooperational and of good moral character. When these things get taken advantage of, that's why we can't have them anymore. So when you have like this Venezuelan guy making a TikTok saying, hey, I've already got, my friends have already taken over 7 houses and we can use squatter rights to take over people's property. We got to stop that. We got to end the squatters' rights. We got to end the asylum. It's not our fault, but if they're being abused, you have to cut it out at a certain point.
This is part of a prediction I made 2 years ago, that my fear is confidence breaking in the United States. This whole system is predicated upon the assumption that the government is strong. Why do people fear like, hey, I can't commit a crime, or I can't, sometimes it could be something minor as jaywalking. People are like, no, I probably shouldn't do that. Why? Because they fear the repercussions for transgressing against a powerful force like the U.S. government. Same thing about the U.S. dollar. Why does it have value? Because people believe it does. So if you say hey, if you do X for me, I'll give you $10. I'm like, that $10, I know I can trade somewhere else. What if one day you woke up and you had money and you went to the store and they said, I want that. And you were like, wait, but it's money. It's like, I don't care. All of a sudden you'd be like, well, then I'm not interested in collecting more of it because it's not working. You'd have to find some other means. My fear last year or the year before, and I was saying this, is that it comes to the point where maybe in Nebraska or in Nevada or something, New Mexico, a small town just decides federal law doesn't apply to us anymore. We don't know what's going on in Congress. Nothing's getting done. Our border is under attack. You get a small town, maybe it's 1,000, 2,000 people. They have a city meeting where a quarter of the population shows up and everyone's yelling and rabble, rabble, rabble. And then a couple guys who are local militia guys just say, we are not going to sit around and wait for the feds to deal with this when we have criminal aliens invading our country, bringing drugs and violence. We need to set up checkpoints now and figure it out later. That's what happen. That's what you get. My fear is that eventually there will be a truck trying to come for a delivery through the highway, and there's going to be 4 guys, just militia guys, and they're going to put their hands up, stop the truck, and say, what can I do for you?
See, but this is the problem with anarcho-tyranny, is that the government would immediately send the army to go take care of that
Not
issue.
If it happens all over the place. My point is confidence, not a single group of individuals in one place. If confidence breaks that the U.S. government is no longer enforcing the law, which is exactly what we're seeing with Donald Trump, this comes next year, right? And maybe not totally wrong. It's just hypothetical. Potential scenario based on the probabilities. If Donald Trump loses, you already have, over the past 4 years, what is it, 70% of the Republican Party saying Trump actually won and Joe Biden's not the president. What do you think happens if Joe Biden wins again with this on the border, with the border literally being attacked? People in Texas are going to start saying, we need to start enforcing this ourselves. There's no government. When you have hordes of non-citizens coming in your community, sleeping in your streets, there's rape, there's murder. Lake and Riley, for instance, you're going to get some guys who just say, here's what we do. We go to our street corners. We have neighborhood watch patrols guard our neighborhoods. We get radios and we make sure these people don't come in. Then when someone comes in for a delivery, they stop and say, what can I do for you? Say, I'm here with the delivery. What's your delivery? Where are you going? Who are you going to? Okay, you're cleared to enter.
No.
They
Open up the back of the truck. Let's take a look before you let you in.
Absolutely. And then they say, sorry for stopping you, man, but with everything we're seeing on the border, this starts in Texas. It'll happen in Oklahoma. The federal government will not be able to do this. There are not enough federal law enforcement or U.S. military personnel, not to mention they couldn't under Posse Comitatus anyway. There's not enough federal law enforcement to be able to go across the country if even 100 of these scenarios begin to emerge, where people in their local communities feel like the government isn't functioning anymore. And it can start very simply, but it can start overnight. You've got Congress, impotent, unable to get anything done. The border is being overrun. Everyone knows. Democrats in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, all major cities are screaming about this. You've got people in the black community in Chicago screaming at Democrats saying, we are being replaced. While the media is claiming that if you say you're being replaced, you're a white supremacist. The system is not functioning anymore. So I fear it's only a matter of time now, especially as we're entering the warmer months, and this is going to crank up dramatically, that it's going to be 7 guys in a small town here, 15 guys in a small town there. They're going to say, I don't care about Tim Pool. I don't care about Crowder. I don't care about Rogan. I don't care about CNN. I don't care about Trump. I don't care about Biden. All I know is some guy came and murdered my neighbor's kid. And then they're going to set up their neighborhood watch, and you're going to have pockets of sovereign law enforcement in their own communities. Local police departments will probably be on board with a lot of these groups, and they'll start defying federal law more than they already do.
This is something that Laken Riley's dad mentioned the other day when he was addressing the Georgia Senate, which is that the millions of illegal immigrants who have entered the country are making families nervous. Like, they are now concerned, like you're saying, that not only is the federal government not going to stop in to protect them at the border, but also the state government is not going to protect them either, because he pointed out that the city where University of Georgia's campus is in is a sanctuary city.
Yep.
And so all the steps failed that we're supposed to believe in. We're supposed to believe that the government's in place is there to protect our citizens. And instead, he gives this emotional speech talking about how he has basically lost his purpose because his daughter is gone because of someone who we knew was here illegally and who got arrested in New York. So there were steps along the way at which this person could have been, deported. And instead, he arrived in a sanctuary city and allegedly murdered Laken Riley. I mean, it's a tragedy, but the more examples that we have of these things, the more fathers like Jason Riley will exist and will say, we are losing confidence in you guys.
Well, but it's also, I mean, you could say the same thing about just the overall rate of violent crime in America, where you've got people like Daniel Penny. I mean, they're making an example out of him specifically to say, like, if you try to do the government's job for us, we don't care about the criminals. We can't do anything. Apparently, we're completely impotent to stop the criminals, but they are very good at stopping people who stand up to the criminals. And I don't want to underestimate the power of the federal government, because, I mean, when they want to clean something up, it gets cleaned up. Look at what happened a couple years ago with the Haitians, where there were it was at Eagle Pass, Texas. There were thousands of them encamped. It was continuous. It was getting worse and worse. More were flowing in. And at the moment it became embarrassing for the federal government, the next day it was cleaned up, totally cleaned up. Like, the tents were gone, the trash was gone, the people were gone.
But it's
a choice.
Spot removal. The federal government does not have the ability to contain dozens across the country all at once. They struggled with the Bundy family scenario. They struggled with it. It was a big problem, and they're desperately trying to retaliate against the Bundys because of what happened. Ammon specifically, I think they threw him back in jail. When it comes to the point where there is no confidence at a wide level, which is where we are going, New York doesn't so much matter to the big picture. New York is New York. New York will do what New York is going to do. The cops in New York, do you know why the National Guard and the cops are in the subways checking bags? That's not to stop crime. It's to stop you.
Right.
Because Daniel Penny committed an act of vigilantism. Because there was a video or photo from November of a guy opening fire with a revolver, I believe, in the subway because of a mugger. They don't care about the crime. They care about vigilantes. They want to check your bag to make sure the next time someone commits crime, you don't stop them.
Right. Well, it's also just getting people used to the idea of having a soldier with an automatic rifle checking your bags because you're going on the subway. I mean, it's inuring us to the concept of military occupation.
But this will happen in cities, but it's not going to be the same outside of cities. The challenge for the federal government is always going to be that they do not have the manpower. No law enforcement agency has the manpower for their jurisdiction. It may have been the case 200 years ago, but it's not been the case for at least 70 years. New York, for instance, has an estimated, 30,000 police officers? Someone want to Google the number? I think if you include support personnel, it might be like 38,000. There's 2.5 million people on Manhattan Island alone. If 1% of Manhattan Island was rioting through the streets, you would not be able to coordinate third shift police forces do anything about it. They would have to call in neighboring police in an emergency, call in the National Guard. If 10%, not even 10, 5%, if 5% of New York City, and I was saying Manhattan Island, let's say the entire New York metro coalesces in Manhattan for a protest. There's 13 million, 10% is a million people, and they all are just rioting. It's over instantly. So people often overestimate the strength of the federal government because of what is called spot removal, meaning something spikes and the federal government targets it and eradicates it.
Right.
So you get a mass shooter, law enforcement go in. But what if you get 50 all at once? They do not have the managerial power to coordinate against something like that. And this is my concern.
Well, but the thing is, they're already putting the things in place to stop it from ever getting to that eventuality by saying that white supremacy is the number one threat, by targeting the militia movement. They're piecemeal going through and stopping.
But you misunderstand. What I'm saying is it is those actions which is putting in the minds of regular Americans across the country, there is no government. And so the federal government can come out and accuse white people of being racist all day and night. They can put in these policies where we see things saying like, if you want to get this job, you can't be white, which we literally just saw in a viral X post. And all that's doing is cracking away at confidence that government actually exists. So there will not be a capability of the 16,000 federal law enforcement agents or whatever to deal with 50 different instances across the country of not even violent riots, quite literally just local militias setting up checkpoints. At that point, they're going to be like, where do we go now to try and stop this? Eventually, more people start breaking away. They say California has not respected the law in 20 years. California says Texas is defying the Supreme Court. Texas says California is defying the Supreme Court. You've got Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland have jurisdictions that have declared themselves two-way sanctuaries and are refusing to enforce state and federal law pertaining to guns. It is just breaking apart very, very slowly. And eventually, it will just be hyper-localized. New York will say, all we can do is New York. The federal government will say, we only have access to certain areas, so let's secure our resources in the areas that matter most. But there's going to be lost areas that are just going to fall into civilian militia control.
Do you want the NYPD data really quick?
Yeah, how many people?
So in 2023, there were just under 34,000 officers. And in 2000, it was at its all-time high with just over 40,000 officers.
Yeah, and I think a third of them are support staff, meaning they don't actually have guns.
And they're reporting that they're well under what they're budgeted for, meaning that they are losing people quickly and they don't have the staff that they theoretically think they need.
I think there's like this fantasy, this technocratic fantasy that one day we'll have enough control of our population that we'll have drone surveillance and militia. Like, yeah, you might have 30 different militias in 30 different places, but we've got the drones. Because right now, like you're saying, the humans can't organizationally handle that kind of breakout, but drones can. But LOL, it's a freaking fantasy, you guys. If the power goes out, first of all. Secondly, you cannot contain local rebellion, not on a mass scale, not a coordinated mass rebellion. So,
but it's not about rebellion. This is I think people assume Hollywood shifts the perspective of people to guns go bang bang and punches go smack smack. They do not make these sounds. It's not about rebellion. Civil war erupts historically in many places when people no longer believe the government exists. Or we talked about this on the Culture War with the Roman Empire, when we were talking about the history of the Roman Empire. And a lot of people like to say what's happening in the US right now is so much like the Roman Empire. It's the barbarians storming the gates. And then I end up talking to these guys and they're like, which period in the thousands of years of Rome are you talking about? Because people like to mix and match different parts of Rome to make it seem like we're in Rome right now. And turns out we're actually not. There's similarities to some parts of it, but it's not very much like it at all. Well, what you end up seeing with the fall of the Roman Empire is a guard in the eastern portion, which eventually breaks away into the
Eastern Roman Empire, which became the Byzantine Empire later.
Right. It's because a soldier walks up to someone and says, "I am a soldier," and they go, "Yeah, buddy, get in line like everybody else." And they say, "Did you hear what I said? I am the soldier. I represent Rome." And they go, "Rome who?" And then all of a sudden, it matters not what you think your enforcement is. The way I've described it before is actually much simpler. If you got a knock on your door and you looked in your people and there was a guy in a clown costume and you said, can I help you? And he held up a warrant and said, I'm from the clown police and you need to open your door. You'd be like, okay, buddy, you need to get off my property now or else. Right now, we are in a country where when law enforcement shows up to your house, you recognize the law enforcement. You say, okay. Or a lot of people actually now are calling cops. We've seen this with federal law enforcement. It happened in Ohio, a couple of years ago, when an ATF guy showed up to some lady's house. She called the police. The police detained the ATF guy. You get to this point where people laugh and say, when was the last time your agency actually did anything to anybody? And they view the uniform no different than they would view a clown costume, as something unrecognizable, silly, and a joke. That's how Rome breaks. When confidence no longer exists, the badge means anything.
Well, but the badge doesn't have to mean anything if the gun means something. I mean, you're going to do what they say, and you're going to treat them like an armed person. Maybe the uniform doesn't matter, but it wouldn't matter if...
So what would you do if a clown showed up to your house with a gun, banging, saying, let me in?
Well, it's... I mean, that's a very silly example. But if it's a group of clowns that kick down my door in the middle of the night and point them in my face and say hands up, I would have to put my hands up and go with them.
I think I feel like you're making excuses to try and justify why you think confidence can't break in government, because we all know what would happen, because we've all seen it happen in this country, and it happens very, very often when plainclothes police officers kick doors in without announcing themselves. Armed homeowners fire back. Mm-hmm. We do not want violence. We do not want this escalation. But when it comes to the point where there's a guy who lives in a rural area and someone shows up and says, I'm from insert whatever department, and they say, I don't recognize that because you guys have assisted, you've done this, you've done that, or otherwise. And then they say, open the door or else. And he says, I'm going to make a phone call real quick. My point is that when it comes to a local community feeling like they're being invaded, like this guy saying his daughter was killed and he has no purpose anymore. In Florida, they've dealt with this quite a bit, which is why they have the government they do. But if you live in a place where a guy's daughter was just killed and that dad goes to his buddies and says, if I call you, will you answer? They say, you got it, buddy. And then what happens when some government agency comes to his house and they say, now's the time to get on your knees. We have the guns. He goes, I'm calling my buddies. The buddies show up and they say, you guys need to turn around and get out of here. That's what's happened historically. That's what I fear may happen as we're watching the border collapse and the Biden administration do nothing.
This is what I'm so interested in with the George Allen Kelly case. They were rancher in Arizona who got arrested because there were people coming on, illegal immigrants coming onto his property, and he shot one. His jury selection started today, and I think the outcome of this case will sort of take the temperature of what you're talking about, because so many people in that community said, yes, this is a problem. We're right against the border with Mexico. We have people cross illegally through our property all the time. Kelly had specifically fired warning shots before, I believe. I'm not super up to date on this case, so I'll get better on my reporting. But, people kind of rallied around him when this broke because he's in his 70s and he's facing, second-degree murder charges for trying to defend his own property, especially in a specific case where he's right against a federal border, the Mexico border.
Well, yeah, and according to him, the illegal immigrant he shot aimed a gun at him first. So,
right.
So in any reasonable situation, he would have never been arrested, but he has been arrested and he's being charged with second-degree murder. My question is, how would the mass breakout of this happen without coordination? I mean, unless it just magically happens in a bunch of different places at once. Well, yeah, what would be the...
That's an absurd word to use.
Well, but that's what it would take because...
Well, first you have a couple different concepts surrounding... you have the ideas of mass formation psychosis. Mm-hmm. This is something we use in a negative context where people begin to adopt rapid behaviors through mass media. So certainly I wouldn't call it magic that the wokeness mind virus emerges and infects all of our media. You then have the other concept of a standalone complex where tons of people all take similar actions at the same time, which creates the perception of organization or conspiracy. It is actually quite simple. When the media reports that an old man defending his property is going to prison for defending himself against a criminal alien invader, I guarantee you, it's already happened, that there have been guys in rural parts of the country who've sat down and had conversations, say, what do we do if one of these guys comes onto our property? You hear they arrested that guy? And they said, look, we'll create a group chat. Just let me know if you see anything happening. If something happens, we'll come, we'll take it. We got your back. Okay. That's the beginning. It's not about a magical organization. No, organization doesn't need to happen. It's a guy calling his son. It's a guy calling his brother. It's a guy sending out a mass text from his phone right now to all his buddies who live within 30 miles, being like, there's a group of criminal aliens and they're sitting on my property and they've got guns and they're threatening to shoot me. Help, I need help.
Right, but the instant he sends that message, the instant he goes online to try to coordinate this, he's getting a knock on the door by the FBI. The thing is, it is spot cleaning, but unless it all erupts at once and there's too many spots for them to deal with, they will individually.
Literally my point.
Right.
My fear is we get to the point where there are too many criminal alien invaders. You've got millions now in the country. You've got people posting videos saying seize their homes. Vigilantes in New York successfully evicted some squatters. We know what happens next when law enforcement breaks down, and nobody wants to live that way. So we're already at the point now where you have had numerous shocking incidents around the country, and it starts slow, grains of sand added to a heap, but the federal government does not have the capability to react to widespread loss of confidence with millions of criminal aliens in this country. If it comes down to you've got roving gangs in cities smashing up stores. There was a video out of Chicago where one of these guys starts shooting at one of the windows like crazy. Eventually, you get what you saw in New York in November. A mugger attacks somebody and a guy pulls a gun and opens fire. They stop caring. Eventually, you get the riots like George Floyd. And when people called the police, what did the police say? Sir, the city is under attack. What would you have us do? A mother and her daughter were in their car, and I think this might have been in Virginia, and the rioters started attacking the car, and she called police, and they said, sorry, we can't help you. We can't do anything about this. The riots weren't organized to a certain degree. Some of the protests were organized, but people came out and joined in because in cities they went nuts. If you get a comparable thing to the George Floyd riots in rural areas, federal government cannot enforce against that in the same way the NYPD could not enforce the George Floyd riots. At that point, your hope is things calm down. There's a period of stabilization where the local militia groups are not in active conflict. Someone like Trump gets elected, restores communication, rebuilds that confidence, and we don't devolve into outright civil war.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I mean, this is all deliberate, right? They're collapsing America on purpose. They don't have to let 1 million people in. They don't have to fly 300,000 people in. They're doing this on purpose. This is sort of the desired outcome, because what is the normal person who's not going to pick up a gun and go to, join a militia? They want more government when things start to collapse. The more it collapses, the more they cling to daddy government to, and empower them more. And this is why we have people in the subways in New York. I mean, that's not a lack of government participation. It's an upgrade of government participation.
The logical line that you are following is that civil wars never have happened before, cannot happen. Rome never collapsed. Well, as if confidence in, like, the Roman Empire decided one day we would just cease to exist.
Well, yeah, Rome's a different issue. Rome provided the blueprint that the people are following now, and it was pretty similar, especially when you had groups of Germanics coming in, almost exactly like we're seeing now, saying,
how did the Soviet Union collapse?
It lasted for 80 years with the most powerful country in the world arrayed against it, along with NATO and everybody else. These things can last forever, and we don't have any. I mean, why
69 years?
Why hasn't South Africa descended into civil war yet? These degradation can go on forever. Well, how long has it been? 40 years
since the end of apartheid,
or 30? Yeah.
30?
Yeah.
Maybe it takes longer. These are different scenarios. These are different circumstances. For all we know, what's happening in the U.S. could take 8 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating. That's sort of in alignment with Strauss-Howe generational theory.
We've got way better communication tech now, which is a big difference than what the Romans had. We have telephones. We have instant communication over long distance.
Which rapidly speeds up everything from organization to disorganization.
Yeah.
So in the instance that you say, how do people organize so quickly? The internet.
Well, okay, and so the government will say, hey, these dangerous militia groups are using the internet to, organized insurrection. We have to, take more control of the internet. We have to shut down the internet.
If the internet shut down, neighborhood watches and local militias would form in 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm. But then how would they communicate with others?
They don't need to. You're misunderstanding. I am not talking about 10 million armed Trump supporters waving Trump flags. I'm talking about 7 guys in rural Oklahoma being like, I don't know anybody, anywhere, or anything. All I know is I'm defending my chickens. One day, federal agents try driving through and they say, you can't come through here. The federal agents say, yes, we can. We're federal agents. I don't know nothing about no federal agents. I ain't got no internet. I ain't got no phone. It's my land. Back off.
Yeah, I mean that type of thing happened in the '90s, and they burned 80 kids alive and still celebrate it to this day.
But that's not correct. That's not absolutely.
You're talking
not,
about in a
first you've got
Waco.
Ruby Ridge and
Waco.
you've got Waco, and those are entirely different scenarios where a single isolated spot was removed. It's spot removal.
Right.
They can't handle a total confidence breakdown. It's not possible.
Yeah, I think that what we're being told is they have total surveillance control and can find you anywhere, anytime but the reality is no, it's not. They don't. They have some, and I think that is, like I said earlier, this technocratic nightmare where they want it, but it's not. The reality is the humans are running the show, and if the humans decide to break, then the show breaks.
But they are establishing it, and you only need to do it to one group to send a signal out to all the others to go where they look at that and go, oh crap, I don't want to be burned to death. I better not do what I was planning on doing.
The inverse happens. You take a look at what happened in Syria. What sparked the Syrian civil war? When groups of protesters started growing, Bashar al-Assad declared many of these people to be terrorists. Maybe they were, I don't know, and started actually opening fire on some of these groups, creating there was like a dozen or more. There was probably like 50 emergent factions at the start of the Civil War, and they slowly began to coalesce as the fighting continued. The breakdown is not like a bunch of people hold a continental congress and then hereby decree. It's that 5 people in one area are fighting, and then you go, did you hear what just happened, dude? 50 miles down, they torched the Johnson's place. We better get our boys ready for what they're going to bring.
Yeah,
it escalates the violence.
It could have either result. You could cow the people by terrifying them from a brute force attack, or you could enrage them and end up having them rise up against you. So you would have to be really, really careful about
rural
doing
Americans.
that.
Urban Americans will absolutely, as we saw with COVID, they will hide in their basements and they will get on their knees when they're told to. But as we saw with the Bundy scenario, it is very, very much likely the opposite.
Yeah, obviously the Syrian government didn't actually go down. So, and they're a lot less capable and powerful than the American government is. I just think that, in a way, theoretically,
I didn't say it was going to win.
Well, but in a way, and theoretically, you're right, because there have been groups that have shown that this is the successful way to do things. In Lebanon, for example, you have local militias that do not allow, the Lebanese federal government in. They control it. They lock it down. It's definitely possible. I just don't think that the government is anywhere near exhausted its capabilities in terms of why wouldn't they launch another, COVID lockdown and, use that as an excuse to tamp down on people.
It wouldn't work.
Or what? I did the last time, didn't it?
It worked in New York City, didn't work in most of rural America. You go out to West Virginia and everyone was like, what COVID?
Right. Yeah, I just think that, again, I like the idea of communities patrolling themselves and not allowing the federal government in. And there are actually mechanisms to do that through the...
at all.
You don't?
I absolutely do not like the idea that the federal government has become a rogue state that is targeting political factions and allowing invasion at our border, and that people may lose confidence in the system and take up weapons themselves. Sounds like a nightmare scenario. You may say that Syria has maintained their government, but take a look at their cities. Ain't nobody wants to live that way.
Right.
And I don't.
But that's where we're headed, and I think the American government seems deliberate in that policy. Again, there's no reason why they would be allowing all these people in. Why they are fighting so hard.
They're not as powerful as you think they are. People like to talk about. You just said we have drones. Yeah, tell that to Afghanistan. The Taliban took over in 2 seconds. They took everything, and now they have weapons. This idea that, perhaps the real conspiracy is that the government tries to maintain conspiracy theories, shout out to South Park, to convince people like you that they're so powerful that nothing would ever stop them, when in fact, they've shown themselves to be completely incapable. I mean, even right now, the best argument to be made is that the Biden administration wants the people to break through the southern border. Okay, perhaps that's a fair argument to make, or you can make another argument. They're unable to do anything about it.
Well, they could certainly do something. I mean, when they're flying 300,000 people in, they could just not do that, right? I mean, when they're actually putting injunctions and stopping the Texas National Guard, when they're going in and removing barbed wire, that's not them being weak.
They want it to happen.
Right.
So my point is, you could make the argument that the federal government is incapable of securing the entirety of its borders.
But it's not. It's deliberately not.
We know that they're flying people, and that's not my point.
Yeah.
There is not enough U.S. military personnel to secure every inch of its borders. That's why even in San Diego, they just swim in.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to Tijuana, it's really funny. The fence goes like
like 40 feet out into the water,
And
80
so-
feet out. You just swim around it.
and they quite
wild.
literally do.
It's nuts.
So what they do is they'll get scuba gear. They'll go short ways up, go underwater, swim into San Diego till they get to a beach, and then take the gear off and pop up. And
I was
just
in
like that.
Tijuana looking at that, just thinking like, I could just swim. Do they have snipers waiting? Because why aren't people just swimming around the border around the border wall?
No, in fact, there's a hole in the border there where in the middle of night people just go through. Now, by all means, I think it's fair to say the Biden administration certainly wants these people to come in.
Right.
And so my point ultimately is there are not enough military personnel, CBP personnel, law enforcement to actually maintain control in the event of a loss of confidence. For example, the George Floyd riots. The George Floyd riots happened and the police just left.
But that was another deliberate thing, right? I mean, that was...
No, whether it's deliberate or not that's conjecture.
Well, no, I mean, when you have like the federal government, giving him a funeral with a golden casket and taking a knee and wearing the kente cloth, and when you have the local mayors joining in with the, I mean, how about this? When you had them tearing down statues in places like, I think it was Alabama, you had the mayors actually showing up and going, hey, let us do it. We'll bring in a crane and we'll do this for you. I mean, this is deliberate. It's not like they can't stop some of this
We're
stuff.
getting lost in the weeds because, simply put, what I am stating is fact. It is a historical fact. It is a fact of humanity. No government has ever been strong enough to maintain itself against lack of confidence from the people. It is just mathematically impossible.
You'll know it if you play video games like I do. When your own people rebel against you, those are your own troops. So it's not like you have to fight enemy troops of your troops. You actually lose half of your troops, and then you have to fight against your own guys.
If the idea of supreme government if the idea was that if government wanted to, they would never lose control, there would have never been a single civil war or revolution throughout history. The fact that the American Revolution
We're
happened...
we're talking about the American government right now, though.
And you seem to live in this world where they are gods.
No,
How many federal law enforcement personnel are there?
enough to systematically go through and round up every single person that was at the Capitol over the last 4 years. I mean, the thing is, they are doing it piecemeal.
137,000 full-time personnel that are authorized to carry firearms in 50 states. 137,000 people. You think 137,000 people is enough in a country of 330 million in the event of confidence breaking down?
No, I think in the hypothetical where you have confidence completely breaking and everybody, I don't know. I don't really understand the scenario you're setting up. I mean, right now we've got a completely broken southern border. We've got them flying people in. We've got this systematic influx of people sponsored by the American government through the UN and all these other NGOs that are bringing people in by the millions. There's no reason why that's going to stop. I don't know what.
I agree.
I don't know what I mean, we already have murders taking place. I mean, at what level do you think it'll get to that this spontaneous, non-magical uprising will take place? I mean,
the fact that you called it magical, I think, shows that you haven't read enough about historical conflicts.
I'm
quite
pretty well read in history.
But you said magically happened. What do you mean? In tons of countries throughout history, there have been pockets where confidence is shattered and people begin to assert autonomy.
Okay.
They'll declare sovereignty, and that's why I use the example of Rome, the most popular example. When it came to the point where the Roman Empire fractured, it's because when soldiers would come and say, "I hereby enforce," they'd laugh and they'd say, "No, you don't. You don't do anything." And then when you're 10 law enforcement officers and you walk into a marketplace, everybody, we're gonna need you to clear out. Federal law enforcement's moving in, and they go, "Get out of here," and they do nothing. You go, "Hey, did you hear what I just said?" And they go, "Yeah, I heard what you said. Get out of here." And then all of a sudden, they've got 50 locals with crowbars being like, "Shut up. We don't know who you are. You don't live here, and we don't care what you think." That's historically what happens when confidence breaks in government. It happened thousands of times throughout history. And my fear is it happens here. When we cite Thucydides' trap as a reference to potential war with China, it's because historically, this is what happens. And now we are looking to the past to try and predict the future based on current circumstances. And we're hoping that though history is rhyming, it's not going to repeat. We don't want World War III, but it seems like no matter what we do, we are inching towards that. 137,000 full-time law enforcement in a country of 330 million. If 10% of the U.S. population simply said, "I'm not going to pay taxes," there is no physical way that the federal government could do anything about it. That's 30 million people to 137,000 law enforcement officers.
But what I'm saying is how would that happen spontaneously? It would have to be coordinated, and as soon as the coordination,
You're arguing that like
because people aren't going to take the risk.
Eastern Roman Empire organized the fracture, and like things break apart when deals break. How does a company go out of business? There's sometimes the money dries up and the guy says, "Hey boss, how come you're not paying me anymore?" And he goes, "We don't have enough money." Bye. Oh no, now I no longer have a security guard at my front door.
Right.
Then a bunch of guys come in and steal stuff. How did they steal stuff? Did those criminals organize with the security guard? No.
But
resources broke down.
But if there are, like happened in 2020, riots breaking out in 100 cities at once, that was coordinated, it was communicated, it was organized in a very obvious.
That's a gross overestimation. Some of the protests were organized, but a lot of it was just people seeing social media and then going outside and
communicating
rioting
with one another.
And the real reason for the
yeah.
riots was that they were locked in their homes for 6 months in cubicles and they lost their minds. They didn't actually care for the most part about George Floyd. Most of these protesters who are screaming don't actually have facts behind their anger. It's just emotional. It's just rage. So the George Floyd riots, in my estimation, likely was caused by COVID lockdowns, pent up people locked in their houses, sickly, angry, and they want to go outside. So they justified it. So then they went out and did whatever they want. There was a modicum of organization, but you do not need organization for people to lose confidence in a system.
Yeah, but I think you need communication in order to have the overwhelming numbers that you're talking about. Because again, okay,
we got to stop real quick.
Okay, but
I think you live in Hollywood. You live in this world where there has to be armies marching down the street. I'm talking about a neighborhood watch. Does neighborhood watch exist?
Yeah.
What happens if 500 neighborhood watches pop up all throughout various rural parts of the country and they say, we don't take orders from federal law enforcement? None of them have to talk to each other at all.
Yeah, well, they have to talk to each other, individually.
Oh, like three guys who live next door to each other have to talk to each other. Gee, that sounds very hard.
No, but they already have done a very good job of systematically. January 6th was like the biggest honey trap ever, and they said it was a shock and awe campaign to take out the leadership that would be able to organize.
But this proves that January 6th was disorganized nothing. It proves that there was no plan. That people just shut up and bumbled about. Some people got angry and fought with cops, and now they're being chased down. And I think there's like 1,300 people so far. And some people showed up after the fact and walked in confused, proving there was no organization and no plan, yet you still managed to get hundreds of thousands of people to show up down there. Now, spot removal. When you have a few thousand people, 3 years on, they're still tracking people down and going after them. And if your argument is they want to get every single one, well, they've only gotten about 1,000. Out of hundreds of thousands that were in DC and thousands of people that were there and 1,000 that went in the building, they certainly haven't gotten everybody. Nor could they. It's not possible.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we've already had an influx of God knows how many 10 million maybe illegal immigrants over the last just couple years since Biden was in office. I don't think the vast majority of Americans care or even notice any change in their personal lives, and they're not going to take a risk, which they would see as a risk, which would be to go against the federal government without something being very compelling for them to do so. I mean, the thing about the taxes...
We got to stop, because you've gone all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, which started with criminal aliens just set fire to barricades and attacked our country.
Right.
And that is the precipice, which I described. When people start getting killed by these people is when I said sometime in the next year, people will say, I no longer have confidence. To go back to now, reset the whole conversation to there would have to be a catalyst. I think we should move on. Let's jump to this story from the New York Post. New York Attorney General James moves to seize Trump assets in Westchester. His $464 million plus interest fraud bond deadline looms. Letitia James may have her sights on Trump's Westchester golf course. Shortly after Judge Engoron handed down his verdict against Trump in the case, James's team formally registered the judgments in Westchester County, indicating his properties there may be in jeopardy. Trump has responded, telling New York to keep your filthy hands off Trump Tower as he vows not to declare bankruptcy and begs donors for support to cover the $554 million bond with just 4 days to go. That will never happen. That won't happen. He's trying to raise as much as possible. He's not going to be able to do it. He says he will not let them take the iconic Trump Tower, There's no way he's going to raise $454 million in 4 days from supporters. There's no one that will issue that bond. The case against Trump was a summary judgment from a judge that has no merit, no basis in law. And we are now at the point where in New York, the police have begun defending criminals, arresting homeowners, and creating arbitrary rules through a fake judicial system to destroy the front runner for the presidential election in 2024. The action they are taking here has already proven, based on the filing reports of several Trump-aligned PACs, they are covering too much of his legal fees, keeping down his ability to spend money on campaign ads because they are hobbling him so they can cheat and win in 2024. There is no country. There are rogue states trying to steal power. The border is under attack. I don't know what else to tell you. We go through lulls where the news is kind of slow and everyone kind of feels like things are okay. And then you get shocked again with another jolt of psychotic breakdown in public order. And here we are today, when they made their moves against Trump to arrest him in the first place, in like the first federal case, it was shocking because many conservatives said they will not try to arrest a former president. That would be insane. And now we're at the point where he's facing, 91 indictments, 750 plus years. And in New York, they've created false bureaucratic means by which they're trying to seize his properties now. This is lawfare. Look, this is modern warfare. This is the reason why the migrants storming the border don't have weapons is because in the mass media era, convincing people is the most powerful tool.
They're human shields. They don't want them to have weapons because then they'd have a casus belli to open fire and defend yourself if they came. They don't want them to have weapons.
And the people storming the borders want to be seen on camera with their hands up, acting like they're innocent, because the left will defend them because we are in active conflict.
This makes me really remember that all of our stuff is on loan. Everything we think we own has been given to us by the Federal Reserve in our new system. All the money that we think we have is the Federal Reserve's money on loan to us. They've loaned it to our government to issue they've given their government promissory notes, promising to pay them back, and then the government gives us dollars.
I think you're short selling it a little bit. You're half correct.
I don't want to think it.
It's not that it's on loan. It's that you only own what you can protect.
Correct.
So when, I think about this all the time. I own land. What does that mean? If at any point a squatter shows up and the police don't want to assist me, I own nothing. I have a piece of paper with my name on it. Fat load of good that's going to do for me.
And when the courts
Trump
bend
is
and
proof.
twist, I know, it's so gross.
I just think every state that Trump owns property in should take notice that this is what Letitia James is willing to do. She's going to start with property sales in New York, and then she'll branch out wherever she needs to go, which means that the New York state government is coming off after property in other states. They are expanding their control through this method of trying to take down Trump. I think that's weird and sick.
You know what I wonder is we were talking with Clint Russell the other day about national divorce. My thought for a long time was that national divorce could lead to nothing but civil war. But I think perhaps one thing we missed is the Roman Empire split in half.
Yeah, it wasn't real. They didn't go to war with each other. Not really.
Well, there's a series of civil wars before,
sure,
long time before they split apart. Yeah. So,
what I mean is with this New York stuff, if there is some kind of national divorce, it may just be the fracturing into the eastern and western states or something. We don't see as serious of a civil war like the American Civil War. There will be fighting over resources, but then eventually we get some kind of dark ages, I guess.
I think that if states were like splitting off, that the federal government would aim at the long game. Like they would spend the next 40 to 60 years using global military force to reconquer any of the split off territory.
I don't know. Rome wasn't able to do it. Certainly the Roman Empire didn't want to fall apart.
They didn't have airplanes or telephones. Like it was too far away for the Romans. The United States can fly a B-52 across the country in 7 hours, 10 hours.
I agree that
hours.
It does bolster, but I also think that proximity is still the most important communication. Like you can send signal and have people loyal to you, but the Roman soldiers in the East who were loyal to the Roman Empire still were unable to enforce anything. So if the federal government makes the phone call to to their agents in Wyoming, they can just be like, the people here don't care what you think.
I just think men are great. You can always bring up the Roman Empire.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So fun.
Well, it's the pop culture reference. We can talk about the Spanish Civil War.
No, stay on trend. Roman Empire forever.
Rome.
Let's go, men.
Right, but
Pax Romana.
with the Roman Empire, it breaks in two. Maybe the United States just breaks in two. Maybe
And they
it's
kind
not
of
as-
did it by choice. I mean, they were like, it's too big. Let's have two emperors now. You rule the eastern part, we'll rule the western part. And then over time, it just kind of became permanent. And they were no longer brother and sister.
Then it
They just
became no empire.
Different countries altogether.
Yeah, I'd say that this is almost more like, just before the big Roman civil wars with Marius and Sulla, where you had people attempting to stand up against what was becoming a very abusive and overblown central government and getting destroyed for it as a signal that they wouldn't stand for this. I think this is a signal to everybody that we are not in Kansas anymore. We don't actually have a representative government. If Donald Trump can be destroyed like this, it's a signal to everybody else saying, you don't oppose us or we will destroy you. Law doesn't matter. Rules don't matter. Justice doesn't matter. Even our own talking points don't matter. We will destroy you with whatever tools we have at our disposal. I mean, this is like the ultimate contest between what, for lack of a better term, is the deep state and anybody who would oppose them.
What they are doing now to Trump in Georgia, the federal government, and in New York is outright telling the American people there is no government.
Well, but there is government because it's the government is the tool that they're using to do this.
No. They're saying there is a mafia, but they're saying there's no government.
Well, the government can be a mafia.
Right. What I'm saying is, in the minds of the average person, the government is something we are a part of. We, the people, we pay taxes. The police come, they help me.
That's what's being
If I'm honest and follow the law properly, the police will come and protect me. And what they're telling you right now is that's not the case.
Right.
There's no government anymore.
Yeah, there's only one thing you can't do, and that's oppose them. Everything else will be permitted. And I mean, this is, again, sort of the ultimate contest between whether we live in a republic or not. The sad thing is that Letitia James said she was going to do this and got elected on the promise to do exactly this. So,
which proves malicious prosecution.
It does prove malicious prosecution, but it also proves that the people who elected her are fine with it, which is the really troubling part. I mean, same thing with Fani Willis, right? Fani Willis goes up and makes an absolute fool out of herself. There's absolute proof that she's corrupt in a dozen different ways. She just puts on a, like, you don't mess with me sort of attitude, and she gets praised for it and allowed to stay on the case. So we're entering into a very dangerous circumstance where, I mean, it's almost idiocracy at this point, where like the people themselves are cheering on what's going on here. And I think if you ask the average, especially Trump hater, they don't even really care about the particulars of any case. They just have some sort of vague concept that Trump is a criminal and he's getting what's coming to him. They don't really care about the valuation of Mar-a-Lago. All they know is like, get Trump. Trump is an existential threat to our democracy, whatever they think that is. It is in a very real way an information war where you've got people cheering this on and co-signing it by voting for the people or encouraging the people that are doing this.
I think the only question that I have is buy property in like Montana or El Salvador.
Both.
Yeah, I guess. It's a question of, someone asked us on the members show, I think it might have been yesterday, is it stay and defend your nation, protect your values at all costs, or get out while you still can? It's a difficult question. And a lot of people, I know in the chat's going to light up, they're going to say, don't leave. So many people are fleeing their home countries like Venezuela instead of fighting to save their homeland. And I'm like, that's absolutely correct. And then there are other people who are like, at a certain point, you have to realize when the battle's lost and you need to save yourself.
I think it's time to build like we talk about culture a lot, but it's time to go into the belly of the beast and create the best art on earth so that the people around the world look at us and want to be like us and support our beliefs. That's why I'm in Miami so much. It's like the heart of it all. I mean, it is where cultures are colliding everywhere you look, and that's nice.
They got a lot of cleaning up to do in Miami.
Yeah, I always thought it was interesting when China stopped wanting to import American movies. There were fewer box office sales. They were kind of declining. I mean, this used to be our big export, our culture, which came with sort of glamorous values, that we believed in family and we believed in patriotism, stuff like that. And eventually these other countries were like, no thanks, America. Whatever you're selling, we don't want. That's a bad sign.
We lost those values, didn't we? I mean,
No,
now
exactly.
the
We stopped-
movies that are made are not, I wouldn't want to import them either if I was China. So, yeah.
But I'll tell you, all you guys listening that aren't in the United States, the reason I'm such a badass is because of free speech.
Yeah, and obviously we're losing that to a great degree as well. And I think if the people that are fleeing places like Venezuela had a different mindset, maybe Venezuela wouldn't be the type of place you'd want to flee.
I think the thing people should realize is the social order breakdown that I described, where people just start saying your laws are meaningless, quite literally has already happened. It's not a hypothetical. We've watched it with roving gangs raiding malls and stores. They do not care. Law enforcement doesn't exist to them.
I got the feeling that when Kennedy got killed, that was just it for me. And Ron Paul actually really elucidated. He said this really clearly, that he felt like the Republic was lost the day Kennedy was killed, or at least that's when he realized it was lost. And yeah, for sure. Like, I was never raised in a republic. There were senators and shit, but there's been a militaristic deep state underneath it all. But I'm just trying to like skate on top of it and make the best of what we got going on and maybe improve it.
Here's the troubling thing. I was talking to a woman that she called herself a lifelong conservative, but hated Trump so much she would vote for Biden. And I was like, well, but he's like barely there. He's not competent. She's like, it doesn't matter. It's about the team that he brings on. So, like, literally, you've got people in America who are being primed to think that the republic is dangerous. Having these elected representatives is that's unpredictable and can be dangerous because we'll get somebody like Trump. It's good that we have the deep state. It's good that we have permanent bureaucracy there to manage things, and they've been there for a long time and they know what they're doing. So I think that's sort of one of the benefits to these people. They would see it as a benefit of having a Joe Biden in office, where it's obvious he's not the one calling the shots. It's obvious he's not mentally capable of making things happen. It's almost like having an anime avatar as president. It's like everybody knows that's not really the president. It's a figurehead, and everybody's being getting used to the fact that it's a faceless bureaucracy that actually runs things, and they're actually comfortable with that.
I would view it more like an enclave. That is, the way, imagine a checkerboard, and each square represents an element of government. I don't view it as the whole board is deep state or parts of it is deep state. There's isolated, connected lines moving through it where the government exists. It's weak and it's impotent. And then you have this criminal enclave, the likes of the Uniparty, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Obama, etc., and their allies in like the DC Bureau, FBI, as well as certain individuals in the CIA, the NSA, et cetera. But there are large components of each of these areas that are totally oblivious to what's going on and just do as they're told and don't care.
Yeah, compartmentalization is a strategy that they use very effectively.
What I mean to say is, like, the uniparty that we describe is like 7% FBI and like 30% political and like 10% NSA. And they have enough connections between these departments to form their own unique division, as it were, the uniparty deep state establishment. So the people who look at the whole of it, this is a clever thing the media did with that article New York Times did, where they were like, turns out the deep state's kind of awesome. And then they talked to like a NASA engineer and like an EPA water person, because they want you to think deep state means regular government employee.
Anybody in the bureaucracy.
When it actually means there is a rogue mafia interlaced throughout government, clearly breaking the law with allies at various state levels. It is the cult uniparty, but they don't have the degree of power to maintain a system. They are not the actual government. So it's more like a gangrenous rot on government. Not that I think government for the most part is good. Some of it is good, but there's a gangrenous rot that I think ultimately just kills it. It destroys government. And the actions are taken against Trump. They are sending a message, as Kevin O'Leary said, to all people around the world. America is not open for business. It has become Venezuela or Cuba. You bring money here, they will steal it from you. So don't come.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see a lot more of that, especially with the influx of migrants. I mean, there's a reason that Mexico, you have something called the bite, which is you're just assumed that you're going to have to bribe everybody you interact with that's in the government. If you get pulled over, you're going to have to bribe the cop. If you want to start a business, you're going to have to bribe the dude at the tax office. America is very much unique, and Western Europe is very much unique, that's not a regular aspect of life. It's going to start to become a regular aspect of life. And the problem with the deep state is that while it may only be 7% of the FBI, it's that top 7%. And the way that they, control everybody else, especially in Congress, is they basically say there's one or two things that you have to agree on. Everybody has to agree on. Everything else, it doesn't really matter. You can be pro-life, anti-life. That they don't really care as much. But when it comes to war, you have to be for war. When it comes to surveillance, you have to be for surveillance. When it comes to the things that allow them to take greater control, you have to be aligned on it. So It's by isolating and pushing those certain things and giving people the freedom to do whatever else they want. And people go, they go, well, I have 50 things I want to do. I can sacrifice this one thing because I think I can achieve something on these 49 others. But it's that one thing that's actually the most important thing, which is identified by the deep state and pushes everybody forward, and wars is probably the primary one of that.
I think a lot about surveillance because I'm very freedom, open systems. I want to know if I'm being but then and I was really anti-spying, oh, they're spying on us, Dragonfly or whatever, Prism, Edward Snowden reveals the Prism network. And now I'm like, well, the whole world's spying on us. So if our government's not spying on us, that's kind of a problem. That means that our pants are down and we don't have a camera on what our butt looks like, but everyone else knows. I kind of want my government to be at least at the level that the Chinese government is about the knowledge it's gathering on our people, which is, what have I done if I'm thinking that?
The thing is, again, it's a matter of the choices that they're making. If you say something that is offensive in any way on something like Instagram, your post gets tagged, you get taken down. I mean, they are incredibly efficient when they want to be. So how does child abuse material proliferate on these platforms? They're choosing not to go after this stuff. So it's not necessarily about surveillance for surveillance sake. It's about what they choose to apply that surveillance to. If I wouldn't be as against surveillance if they were actually using it to stop child abuse material on the internet. If they were actually using it to crack down on the shoplifting, gangs that are stealing things and shutting down entire downtowns like San Francisco. But they're choosing not to do that because their overarching goal is not a safe, prosperous, innocent.
They have different values
world.
from you.
They have completely different values, completely different goals, and essentially the values and goals that we have are preventing them from getting what they want, which is control.
It's like they want to fund a war machine that conquests the Middle East and most of Northern Africa and Southern Europe to then set up a new global governance based out of, I don't know if it's based out of Switzerland, but heavily involved with the Swiss banking system. That's what they want. And if people like Trump get in the way, they're like, let's use surveillance to knock that down so that we can expedite this transition.
Right. And the other thing about it is that it's international in character. Whenever they use the term, the intel community, you got to understand that's an international community, which is why they outsource it to places like England, the Five Eyes, England and New Zealand and Australia and others. They say, hey, we can't really spy on this guy, but you can. Would you mind spying on him and tell us what you find? So the international community or the intelligence community is international in nature. And essentially it's about systematically breaking down the things that stop you from being controlled. So, and that includes religion, right? If you believe in God and think I serve God above all else, that's a problem because they want you to serve them, not God. If you have guns, that's a barrier to their control. If you're allowed to speak freely and tell people about what you feel, that's a barrier to them controlling you physically and mentally and spiritually. So it's all about systematically destroying the things that make you invulnerable. Right? It's like we're wearing armor with the Constitution, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and they're systematically trying to remove those pieces of armor to get vulnerabilities where they can control us.
I think they've removed it. I mean, what they're doing to Donald Trump, what they're doing to Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon.
What's Navarro? Is that whether he was refused to testify to Congress because he had presidential immunity? Is what he was saying? He's like, the president told me in confidence while he was president, I'm not required at all to repeat what he said to me. But the Congress is like, well, then you're going to jail.
Yes, he's going to jail.
Insane.
He's in jail currently.
Yep.
He reported this
What
week.
was the charge?
Contempt of Congress.
Okay. What's the sentence?
He's going to be
4
there
months.
for 4 months.
Yep.
But he still has an appeal. They ordered him to go to jail even though he has a pending appeal. He asked if he could stay out on bail, and the court said no.
But they think he was
Supreme
going to
Court
flee?
said no.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, it's just old guy's not going
Navarro,
anywhere.
dude. What?
And theoretically, if on appeal they rule in his favor, he'll have already served the jail time that they tried to get him to go to.
You look at what's going on with the squatters. New York is a communist state. I don't like using the word communist because it's archaic, but it's neo-communist. There's no question at this point.
Yeah. What?
The interesting conspiracy theory is that Letitia James organized the ouster of Cuomo so that Hochul could come in and they could team up and do corrupt things together. Because as soon as Letitia James got in, she began these investigations into Governor Cuomo and then used that to get him removed.
Free. So
I don't know,
Harrison. What? Because we talk about it as a communist thing, but it's kind of a vague term that's centuries old. How do you look at what's happening right now government? Is it fascism? Is it totalitarianism, technocracy? Where do you have a word that you use?
Yeah, globalism is the word I like to use, because I think if you can find out where they're going and then trace it back and see what they're doing to head us there, I think the ultimate goal is a one world, unelected, unaccountable government that will use a technocracy or use the technology that they have to keep the entire world in a state of subjugation and basically to extract resources and to keep people completely. Basically, I guess it's communistic in the sense that it's what China already has. Like, China kind of already has the system that they want to implement everywhere. It's being used, China's being used to export and refine that system. But, if you think about like the situation you're laying out, Tim, of everybody, rising up and refusing, and not having confidence in the government, or really any system by which a government could be overthrown or fail to have the power that it needs to manage the population. Like, that'll never happen in China. It'll never happen in China because even people that think that way have a low credit score, so suddenly they can't, get the connections that they would need to create something like that. So China is basically revolution proof as far as I can tell.
That's no way.
You don't think so?
Absolutely not.
I was wondering that earlier. I was thinking, like, why does China have nowhere near this kind of rebellious talk? Like the Tiananmen Square, they rose up, they were knocked down.
The Soviet Union had this system where they would gulag people, and the Soviet Union collapsed in 69 years
because of money. They bought it apart. Basically, they paid off oligarchs to split it apart.
China also has major economic problems right now.
Well, and there's also a internal poison pill of this concept, which again I guess you can call communistic, where it's the system is the only thing that really matters, and you have to serve the system, which is why you had like massive famines under the Soviet Union, because under the communist system, they thought that if we get rid of the farmers and have the land be common, then we'll increase the yield, and so we expect this much grain and we demand this much grain. And when that didn't work and it failed, they still had to send that much grain. So that's why the people in those areas starved, because all of the grain was being sent to fulfill the expectations of the system that wasn't really there, which is the same thing you see with DEI and the diversity things, where they go, we expect that everything will get better if we just get rid of the white people and bring in non-white people. And when that doesn't happen, they end up going, all right, well, we don't have tests anymore. Okay, tests, you can't say, all right, our concept failed, our idea failed, the system that we're operating under isn't accurate and doesn't come out with good results. You can't say that. You have to manipulate and change and cheat and alter the appearance of what's happening in order to ensure that the system continues, even though it's based on fallacies.
Every government is one drought away from revolution.
Yeah, but that would mean that the government is also subject to that drought. I just mean that the system that China has. Well, a natural disaster, I guess, would like a massive.
If the people
drought
don't have food for whatever reason, take no government.
Yeah, I think that's true. But then the government also would be subject to that. I mean, look like what's happening in
not having food.
Yeah. The government also wouldn't have food.
Right, of course.
Right. So that's not as much a rebellion or a overthrow.
No, but that's what sparks the Arab Spring specifically. They said food costs. Well, some studies, there was the cost of food that ignited the Arab Spring across all of these different countries. And that was just the cost of food. Food was there, but people couldn't afford it. They were working too much and getting too little, so they revolted.
Well, and they're definitely going after the food system right now. I mean, you see the way you've got farming riots or farming protests across all of Europe, Denmark, Spain, Germany, France. I mean, every one of them has farmer revolts right now, and they're crushing them pretty brutally by sending out the police and shutting them down. And it's all at the behest of the World Economic Forum's climate change agenda, which is just completely absurd. And it doesn't really matter if the people want it or not. That's the funny thing about calling, Europe a democracy. It's like time and time again, people vote against these things, but they get implemented anyway. And even when the people protest, they send out police to shut them down with rubber bullets.
I mean, if we're looking at climate change policy and depopulation and Malthusian ideals and stuff, I'd only then assume that everything that's happening is intentional. They want a loss of confidence in government.
Exactly.
They want people to not have food, so they revolt. So then once all the countries collapse, they can create a unified something in their stead.
Yeah, I think 100%. That might be intentional too. I'm not going to say that it is, but like, you got to have contingencies. You got to be able to think like, well, what's the worst possible outcome? And a lot of times that is, or like, if something bad can happen, it probably will, or if something can happen, there's a likelihood that it will, kind of thing. What are the odds that no one on Earth wants a depopulation? Very, very, very low. That's a very low chance that nobody anywhere wants
Look,
it.
man, you've got people advocating for the aborting of their own children. So certainly someone convinced them to do away with their children.
Dude, if people like that get into power, that is not good, because they'll put like an AI in charge.
They're all in power. They're already in power.
Well, you got to define power exactly. Like, we have
Kamala
a lot
Harris
of power.
just toured an abortion clinic. Like, there are people who are.
What's
Kamala Harris just toured an abortion because she toured a Planned Parenthood in Minnesota.
That's so crazy.
I don't
right?
think
like there are people who are pro-abortion 100%, and they think you should abort your children, and they would be willing to abort their own. Didn't Lena Dunham come out with that thing saying, "I wish I had gotten pregnant so that I could abort a kid"? Like, that's messed up. And she came out publicly like this was something she was going to get praised for, and I'm pretty sure she did. Like, this mentality is very, very strange. Sorry, go ahead.
No, there was the trans woman who said, I want to be the first person to get a uterus transplant so that I can be impregnated and then get an abortion.
What?
They wear it like a badge of honor, and I find this weird, very, very strange. I mean, setting aside my own values about, how I feel about life or whatever, like, why would you seek out destruction other than the fact that you are wired to want chaos? Like, talking about destabilized society, talking about people losing confidence in governments, that's actually, to me, one of the most interesting things that the Biden administration could do right now is to encourage people to become more restless, to fear violence around every corner, to feel like they can't rely on the federal government, and then pass it off to Trump and say, look, you have this very unhappy, scared population. Now you have to deal with them. Like, there's almost this level of they see that they may not be able to hold on. So instead of giving themselves a united, strong population going into a second term, they want it to be like a unstable, fearful population so that they can try and hinder Trump as much as possible. Remember that Letitia James is in office until 2027. So she can continue doing whatever she's doing, even if Trump gets elected.
It could be that they want chaos. That's why they would want less people, why they would want to sow chaos. But I think there's this mentality of like culling the deer. If you have too many white-tailed deer, they'll eat all the greenery and then they'll starve and you'll lose all the deer. So you have to kill segments of the deer population to keep the population low so it doesn't overeat, so that you always have deer. And if they think like that about humans, it's like a benevolent thought process. They want to preserve humanity, and so they want them not to eat themselves out of house and home.
And they think we're chickens in a chicken coop. Anybody who's got chickens, they know exactly the mentality that you have as the supreme overlord of Chicken City, of your own little Chicken City. And these little monsters, they crap where they walk. They don't care. There's no teaching them otherwise. They literally will stand there, stare at you, and they just take a dump right there, and then they'll step in it. So you certainly have people, powerful people, who look at humans and they think, look how stupid. Look, George Carlin said it. Think about how stupid the average person is. Now realize half of them are stupider than that. So you certainly have powerful interests who, like Alex Jones said, the powerful interests will set bear traps, announce where they are, and if you step in it, they'll say it's your fault.
Yeah. Well, and it's problem, reaction, solution, and then the solution goes back and creates a new problem, and you just implement it again. I mean, Black Lives Matter would be the obvious example, that they get rid of police, and at least they especially get rid of the good police that you would actually want to be police. And so, of course, the crime gets worse, and they don't ever say, oh, man, we were sure wrong about that. Better undo what we did. They double down, or they blame white supremacy, or they just expand it even more and more. Of course, humans aren't chickens, but, again, you look at if you want to control people, you ask what power is, right? Power is control. Control is getting people to do what you want, or at least not having them stop you from doing what you want. And stupid people can't stop you. Dependent people can't stop you. There's the video. It's the same guy. It's the same Venezuelan guy who did the video about, come and use squatter rights to take over property. I believe it was the same guy who's holding up his baby and he's going, this baby is my meal ticket. Come to America, have a baby. You get a green card. You get $1,500 a month. We're going to have more babies. That dude's not rebelling against anybody. He's dependent on them. If you have to go to somebody for your food and go to somebody for your sustenance, you're never going to rebel against them, just like the chickens are never going to rebel against the farmer who brings them grain in the morning. But also, you've got people, so many times people go out on the street and they ask, the average Zoomer, like, how much is a nickel worth? And they don't know. Or they ask them, I don't know if y'all seen the one where they go, do you know where Utah is? And the people go, what is Utah? Like, they don't even know what Utah is. They don't know who the president is. These people aren't throwing over anything. They're not taking over anything. They're not resisting anything. They're too stupid. So they're deliberately dumbing people down.
And I think there are powerful people who are like, it'll take a couple generations, but these really stupid people will not have kids. The population will be reduced because of it. And the survivors, the people who make it through, will lead to a strong and robust humanity.
See, I almost wonder if it's the opposite. They want the stupid people around and they want to oppress the smart people so that they're like, here's the population that's more easily controlled.
I disagree because in terms of the goals that they want beyond just population size, they need effective workers. So what the ideal worker is MAGA. What do they want? Leave me alone. Please leave me alone. These people who don't protest have high tolerance for political tension and pressure. And they understand hard work and are willing to engage in hard work. So if you were to look at these two populations, let's say you get, I describe it as a chicken coop analogy. One group of chickens won't stop screaming, fighting, crapping everywhere, and they barely lay eggs. The other side stays in the corner, poops in the corner, stays away from their poop. They lay a lot of eggs. Which one do you eat? You eat the ones that are causing problems and you breed the ones that are doing things right. The MAGA people have a really high tolerance for political pressure, like even in the face of what they're doing to Donald Trump. I mean, you get one guy chewing on a speedball in a small town no one ever heard of, and they'll build memorials to this guy and riot across the country. The left has no tolerance for tension. If you are trying to reduce population and you want a good, meaningful workforce, the MAGA people are happy living in the woods exactly as they describe, where they're like, you should reduce your footprint. I'm like, okay, who's got the bigger footprint? It's the liberals in the cities. They hyper condense tons of crap and garbage and waste. They demand more every day. And then you've got the hardworking guy rolling up his sleeves, chopping lumber for his own fireplace and relying at least to even 1% on their own sustainability. I'll put it this way too. Septic systems, sustainable. Human waste goes in the septic system. It basically takes care of itself. You do got to get pumped out depending on what you're doing with it. But a good, well-managed septic system, you could leave for a decade depending on a city sewer. Oh man, you're dumping massive tons of waste in the cities. Cities are problems. If I was going to build a tech conglomerate, who would I want? I want the Trump supporters who hate conflict, who hate political uprising, just want to make some money and be left alone. They want to go home to their kids, and that's it. I would not want the BLM people who are filing lawsuits every other week and throwing bricks through windows.
The problem is that the people in the woods would resist the tyrannical efforts from the central controller, and they've got these concepts called mega cities that they want to build from the UN's Agenda 2030, and they want to get people. They want to re-green the world, get people away from the nature, and put them in like cities, and keep people in big centralized areas so that the rest of the world can heal. This is like a weird concept that I've been reading about. Ben Stewart talked a lot about it. So that counter to what you were just saying.
I don't think the MAGA people would not resist tyrannical government. The MAGA people would say, so long as you leave me alone, we're good. And if the tyrannical government was some kind of technocracy where they were building spaceships and luxury department stores, but the MAGA people were getting adequate amount of food, they'd be fine. It's really easy to point out. They are trying to put the front runner in prison, and Trump supporters are like, I'm going to remain calm, as they should. And we're going to make sure we win this politically, as we should. That's stability. That's stability outright. The far left rioted and destroyed this country over a drug addict they never heard of before.
But when you look at the World Economic Forum or the people sort of pulling the strings behind the scenes, which, they obviously are, again, you ask what power is. Well, I mean, the World Economic Forum is essentially, for all intents and purposes, a global government, right? They meet together in Congress, they set policy, that policy then gets implemented nationally or on a smaller scale at cities like the C40 program, which is part of what you're talking about, the mega cities with the corridors in between. Like all of that is very much the plan. And definitely being put into fruition. So, I mean, these people are the ones who are the font of the leftist Black Lives Matter programs. All of this stuff comes from the left and the people in power. So, I don't understand really what, they obviously don't like the rural people. They obviously don't, are not serving them or benefiting them in any way. The rural people are being systematically eliminated right
What's
now.
the C40?
C40 is a plan. It's cities. So it's predicated on climate change, but it's a program that they have where they go, right now, here's how many clothes people buy, here's how much meat they eat, here's how often they fly, here's the car they have. In 2030, they're going to they're going to be able to buy 3 pieces of clothing a year, and they're going to eat bugs, and they're going to be able to fly 1 short haul flight every 3 years, and that's all. And so they're getting cities to sign on to this, and it's 40 cities. C40 is 40 cities around the world. London is one. San Francisco is one. There's a bunch in America, but it's all about it's predicated on climate change, but it's about implementing it at the local level and getting cities to agree on things like no longer serving meat in city institutions. So I think it's San Francisco or maybe LA or something, but one of them's already agreed to it where they're no longer serving meat for, at least a couple days a week at any cafeterias in government buildings.
And there's C40.org. Maybe that's the website, C40.org, Global Network of Mayors of the World, leading cities that are united in action to confront the climate crisis.
We're going to go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, head over to timcast.com, click join us to become a member because this show is made possible thanks in part to viewers like you. As a member, you can watch the Uncensored Show, which will be up at 10 p.m., and you can join our Discord server where there are pre-shows, after shows, and you can network with like-minded individuals. It's the most powerful thing. We need you to do it. But most importantly, as a member, you're just supporting the work we do and our expansion efforts and our coffee shop efforts. But let's read. Ready to Rumble says, what they are doing to Trump goes against the 8th Amendment, excessive fines. Agreed. Completely. Lonzo Harris says, 22 here, and Tim, you're an inspiration. Been watching you for years, and it truly is awesome seeing you affect the culture just like you sought it to do. Harrison, congrats on the newborn. Y'all rock, LFG.
You have a newborn?
Thank you.
Kept this a
Congratulations.
secret the whole time?
No, my wife is pregnant. I just announced on Twitter today that she's pregnant.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Number 3.
Thokit says, Tim, you should come to Ohio University and do a speaking event. After watching that Kyle Rittenhouse thing where they yelled at him, I was like, yeah, that probably would be really fun.
I probably would.
Yeah, because they asked him a bunch of questions, and he said, I'm not going to comment. He's like, oh, Charlie Kirk said this, did that, or did that. Doesn't that seem racist? And Kyle Rittenhouse was like, I'm not going to comment on that. And they started screaming. And then he leaves, and they're like, haha. And then they attacked people outside. So I was like, yeah, maybe. It just sounds like a lot of work for very little. I don't know exactly what the benefit is of just yelling at a bunch of leftists in an audience would be. Fun, but expensive. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says the criminal aliens all see what is waiting for them in the U.S. Free money, food, travel, and now they can squat to have a home. Expect it to get worse. Agreed. Quispy Joe says, Tim, can I get a definition of woke for reference later? I tried to find it earlier, but so many videos. Also, can we get Ian a graphene crown? I don't know how you do that, but it'd probably be very expensive, a graphene crown. I define woke the way it is used in the macro, not the micro. Woke is the social orthodoxy of the mainstream liberal and progressive movement. The reason why that's relatively vague is that there is no ethos. There is no core ideology. It is quite literally, woke is when you fall in line, march in line, and cult-like. It is cult-like here you go, the better. Cult-like adherence to liberal and progressive ideology. Orthodoxy, sorry. Cult-like adherence to. So it can manifest in many different ways. But typically what you end up getting is the academics will say, well, woke is a reference to cultural Marxism. But that's not actually how most people use it. Typically, woke does point to a movie is woke. How? They replaced a white character, a white historical prince is now a black prince, or a Viking is now, Asian or something. And they did that with the Thor movies, and everyone got mad that Heimdall was being played by Idris Elba. I actually don't really care about that. I don't consider it to be a big issue, but it was called woke. And many people argue, well, it's because it's part of DEI and it's part of cultural Marxism. That's true, but support for Ukraine has also been described in similar terms, but supporting war in a foreign country doesn't fall into a cultural Marxist framework. It's quite literally that there is a uniparty cult, and if you adhere to their ideology, this is wokeness. Currently, it is defined as containing elements of cultural Marxism, intersectional feminism, which of course is related to this, and other social justice-tuned political ideas. But The reason why that doesn't really encapsulate the core of woke is that sometimes they say things like, well, I'll put it this way. They will oppose the police when the police oppose them, and they will cheer for police when police support them. So you can't say opposing the police is an element of being woke. What it really is thirst and quest for power. When they get the power, they're happy with the police. They cheer for police. There's videos of them cheering for police. They love it. When they support war in Ukraine, they're supporting the military-industrial complex. So you can't say, like, none of it really aligns properly. Perhaps if I was going to give a broader definition, I would say woke means the cult-like adherence to liberal and progressive social orthodoxy, typically exemplified with current elements of cultural Marxist and far-left social and cultural policies. Economics doesn't really play a role as much. A lot of good examples are given where it's like, if you came out and said that you were a leftist, but you didn't know if universal healthcare made sense, that's fine. You're a leftist. But if you say you're a leftist and you're not sure that children should get sex changes, they'd call you far right. Clearly, the economics doesn't really play a role in this. So there you go. But now I'm prattling. I think you get the idea.
Prattle on, good sir.
Let's get some more. Beavis McLean says, would Timcast Music be interested in making a song in the spirit of We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel? More than enough fires going on in modern era to make a fun topical song to wake up the apolitical.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I just did that with Toby Turner. It's called The Current Thing song, and you should go watch it on Tobuscus channel on YouTube. It's freaking hilarious.
But it is a cover.
Half the stuff we talk about is a cover of a Metallica song. It's a cover of a Metallica song. Good point. We could write
Or
an original one
a
as well.
parody.
It's a parody of a Metallica song. Nothing Else Matters. Great song. Great song. And it is hilarious. And yes, it is time that we make culturally relevant, awesome songs, just like We Didn't Start the Fire. And that song I've been thinking about how this is similar to that.
You know what I wanted to do is I thought it'd be fun to do a parody of April 26, 1992, which I
The
think,
Sublime song?
yeah, but call it May 29th, 2020.
Let's do it. That sounds awesome.
And then just do a cover of it, but then
song.
sing about the far left destroying everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Cool.
Let's go. Where are we at? Our scene says 4 years ago, this was our last normal week and nobody knew it. Hashtag survived the toilet paper crisis of 2020.
That's like right when we started the show, too.
Isn't
Right-
it crazy? It's been 4 years since the start of the lockdowns. It was March. And Trump, I remember Trump going on TV and be like, we're going to shut things down for 2 weeks. And then we were like, whoa, this is crazy. We were in New
I
Jersey.
like remember
Yeah.
that so well.
I used to think it was just because I was in my early 20s when the lockdown started. Now I'm not. Like that's why it felt like so much had changed. But really, our culture has shifted so dramatically since the lockdown. It really, I think, lit a fuse that I couldn't have predicted at the time.
Yeah. I think it made people subservient, and then it allowed the media to kind of guide the conversation instead of the people watching.
Broke everyone's brain.
Yeah, it broke my brain, man. I'm still hypochondriac. I don't like it. I want to get back to normal.
Jason Dixon says, Tim, tell us how evil the Texas DPS are on the border. DPS? Are you referring to the Texas National Guard? What is it? Is it? What?
I think that Department of Public Safety, I think that is one of the agencies that the Abbott is deploying.
Oh, okay. Have they been deployed? Is that who you're referring to?
Yes.
So, Jason, tell how evil they are. Well, I'll put it this way. There's an invasion happening on the southern border, and it's not being stopped. I don't know what else to say. Like I'm not confident in funding organizations that don't do the job they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I would say if you was a D&D character and you were a neutral character and you watch someone doing evil and you just let it happen, you're getting evil as you do that. You're complicit. That would be my thing. And if you're letting people do good and you choose not to interfere and you let them do good, then I would think that you are getting good.
If you did both, it's true neutral. But if your character, there's an interesting way to break it down. The what is that thing called?
Alignment?
The alignment charts. Yeah, the interesting thing about that is, so there's like lawful good, neutral good, and chaotic good. Then there's what is it? Lawful neutral, and then true neutral, and then chaotic neutral, and then chaotic evil, neutral evil, and then lawful evil. So if you're a person who says, leave me out of all of it, whether it's good or bad, I'm not getting involved, then you would be true neutral. If you were someone who, I don't know, like a woman drove from Philly, was going to Atlantic City and accidentally brought her gun with her and politely informed you that she did, and you decided to arrest her, that would be not neutral, that would be evil. If you ignore evil and sometimes engage in evil, I would call you neutral evil.
Yeah, and your alignment shifts over time depending on your behavior and your actions. So if you're allowing evil to take place, that's making you evil.
I think it's fair to say that in most circumstances, cops would just fall into true neutral. They're not lawful good at all. And I think maybe that's the realization people should have, is that true neutral is the way to be, or is the way they are, in that sometimes they will run into a building and save a life. Sometimes they will arrest a woman who did nothing wrong. Sometimes they will stand back and watch evil happen. And, that probably puts them closer as a whole into the true neutral category, which people should understand. If you call the police, they're going to show up and they don't know who you are, who's the conflict, right? I called the cops once when a cab driver was literally kidnapping me, and the cops threatened to arrest me. And then they mugged me. They actually took my wallet and took all the cash out of it and then threw the wallet back at me and gave it to the driver. New York City. Cab driver, there was a bar, Williamsburg Bridge, straight over Williamsburg Bridge to my apartment, and the driver got off the bridge and then turned left and started weaving through the blocks. And when I was like, "Stop, what are you doing?" He was running the meter up. As soon as he started to slow down for a light, I popped the door and jumped out, and he started threatening me and tried to attack me. So I ran into the gas station where the guy stood outside screaming, and I was like, "Call the cops." The cops came, walked up to him. Then they walked up to me and they said, "Give him $50. And I was like, "What?" I was like, "It's a $10 fare." And he was he was attacking me. That's why I called you guys. And they were like, "We don't care. Give him the money or we're arresting you." And I was like, I don't have $50. They said, "Give us your wallet right now." I handed my wallet. They took all my cash out. It was like $27. They handed it to the cabbie and they said, "Go home." And I'm like, dude, they're true neutral.
Yeah,
Probably
supposed to be lawful. They're supposed to be lawful and ideally good.
That certainly
but
was not lawful.
Do you play D&D?
Yeah.
What's your favorite character class to play?
Probably just fighter.
Ooh,
I like fighters. They got lots of skills.
they're pretty badass.
Yeah.
All right.
They're good at the beginning.
I mean, every
which I like.
party's got to have a fighter.
Yeah.
I think so.
Let's read. We got Rivik. He says, "Thanks for all you guys do. Today is my wife's birthday. Wanted to give her a special gift after all she went through to give birth to our son last October. Was wondering if I can get an Ian Rooster Crow. Keep up the good work." You get what you paid for. It's
Pretty good.
What a specific birthday present.
That was
to get
Roberto
away.
Jr. Rooster Crow special for you. Happy birthday.
Yo, Pom Pom is the funniest thing.
What's Pom Pom?
He's one of the roosters that's outside in the guard, I guess the suburbs of Chicken City, and he's this big poofy rooster who rarely yells. And so I'm like, "Are you sure he's a rooster? Because he's not yelling. Like Mr. Mutton Chops and Scar yell all the time. Those are the roosters outside." And Kim's like, "No, he's a rooster." And then we were out there when we were with Mr. Bocus, and Pom Pom went, "Ah!" And we were like, "What?
Not a lot of authority with him.
What was that?" Like, he tried to yell, but he couldn't muster it up.
He cared.
Yeah. All right. We'll grab some more. Yeah. Craig says, "How would local police handle the situation if these guys go off in their district? The criminal aliens." That's look, there's that viral video from like 4 years ago where a cop is driving and he pulls up to a red light, and then a far leftist is filming, yelling and making fun of him. And the cop goes, "You did it. You won. I quit. I'm done. I resign." So all these cops nationwide, when in 2020, there were massive announcements of mass resignations. I think the cops that are in place now, like we see in New York, are just communists.
And New York doesn't have the cops it thinks it should. They have fewer cops than they have budgeted for, which means that they can't convince anyone to take these jobs. Like, that's pretty interesting too.
Dennis Thraka says, "Hey Tim, I left the NYPD in November due to the corruption and mistreatment, and I'd love to tell you all about it sometime. Also, I'm a big fan of you and everyone who's part of the Timcast crew. Hey, shout out. Are you worried about, what was it, guys? Was it Serpico? Was that the guy?
Serpico.
Was he the NYPD guy who was like, "I'm going to expose the corruption," and then they
made a movie about that guy.
Yeah. And then bad things happened to him?
It was it was an Al Pacino movie.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All I know is the It's Always Sunny parody of that. So I've never actually seen the movie, but
I've never seen it.
Michael A says, "Looking at the video of the illegals rushing the border, you can see 3 National Guardsmen get stuck between the horde. It could have gone horrible if the illegal horde decided to attack those guardsmen stuck outside the gate. If they attacked them worse than they already did. It could have gotten worse if one of those guardsmen just said, 'I am under no obligation to allow you to do this.' Because they're armed."
I'd love to get one of those guys on the show and hear their first-person experience.
Barely a Millennial says, "Glenn Beck had a TikTok bill debate with Thomas Massey and Chip Roy, but still seems to be misunderstanding. Also, please consider having Sarah Gonzalez on. She does news and has counterculture makeup line." Cool.
She's cool. I've been on her show before.
Haven't we had her on the show?
Yeah, I thought she'd been on.
Several times.
Yes.
But maybe
Yeah.
not since she launched her makeup brand.
It's
Maybe
been over a
she
year,
comes back.
at least, yeah.
When you say still seems to be misunderstanding, I know you already chatted, but you mean Thomas Massey or Glenn Beck? I think the context would be that Glenn Beck is misunderstanding. I think there's that story right now about the feds are trying to shut down that guy who's making milk. And it's like not really the biggest deal, but people have brought it up. They're trying to shut his farm down because he had like raw milk or something. And I'm like, I hope the fervor people have for the TikTok bill, they have for literally all these bills. Because there's probably like 13 right now in Congress that give insane powers. It happens all the time. People are like, the Patriot Act. And I'm like, bro, there's like 700 bills. There's probably 7,000 bills. Look at the omnibus. The omnibus probably gives Joe Biden the ability to just like go on to Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody.
Well, they all build on top of each other, right?
Yeah. That's what I told Thomas Massey. What he should do is he should put clauses in like 25 different bills that if all 25 get passed, they all reference each other, creating some jigsaw law.
Mega bill.
He becomes king, yeah.
No, but like none of the bills in and of themselves present anything that's like noteworthy. It'll be like this one provision says, and also in the event Section 3 of a bill of Bill 492 is activated, then it will make reference to Section Bill 931, and they'll go, what does that even mean? Whatever, fine. That doesn't mean anything to me. But then what it does is it connects the dots of a bunch of. You know what he could actually do? He could actually use existing clauses from various bills and then actually craft a bill by pulling language from other bills without actually drafting a bill. So it could say something like, Section 4, subsection D, definitions. This bill will also enact subsection D, paragraph 5 of bill of HR, 36. And then that's it. That's all it says. And they'll go, oh, okay. Then when they go to that bill, it'll say something about like the color of flags that have to be presented on those. That doesn't mean anything. But if he does that 25 times, all of these fragments of a bill will create the Captain Planet of bills, which will create this kind of ad hoc law that only exists inside these other laws, but they all line up perfectly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, that
repeal
is
Federal Reserve Act.
kind of what they already do, right? Because they'll pass a bill saying, this is only for international whatever, but then they'll pass another bill later that says, actually, we're going to change the definition of that, and it'll actually apply to domestic now. So they never actually pass a bill saying you're allowed to spy on domestic enemies, but by combining the multiple bills, effectively that is what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he can like get rid of the Department of Education and stuff. You know what I mean?
He's getting closer.
Let's grab some more super chats. Gloom Flower says, why isn't Mexico's refusal to disband these mobs being considered an international incident or an act of war? If hundreds of thousands of Americans were attacking Mexican troops at the border, the world would be outraged. Yeah, but like a whole bunch of different countries they're not sending their best. You know what I mean? So no one's going to complain about it. They're like, we'd like to go there. Mega Mikey says we should start arguing that sanctuary cities and states are actually colonies that dissolute the population of indigenous.
Dilute, maybe?
Dilute. It says dissolute. Of indigenous American citizens. I know we're not supposed to use the left's language, but Dems, please explain. You just call them globalist colonies. Call them WEF colonies. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles have become WEF colonies. They are no longer American jurisdiction.
They're literal colonies. I mean, the videos that are out with at Info Uncensored, flying drones over them and stuff. I mean, it's entire cities being built in like parks in New York, housed entirely housing illegal immigrants. Literal colonies. Yeah.
The Feb 5th says, Tim, you're obsessed. What about the northern border? You are correct, sir. There are many people pouring across the northern border as well. But for the sake of today's video, we did not have a video of a bunch of people flying into Canada and storming the northern border, but they do. It's a fact. And there's like almost no guards up there. It's like relatively easy in a lot of areas for them to just walk right over. In fact, there's one famous viral image where the border between Canada and the US is a single chain link between two yellow posts saying US-Canadian border. And then it just stops and it's a parking lot and then you could walk straight across.
And it's documented that border crossings are increasing there. What's also interesting is that like people will fly to Canada and cross the border there. People do this with Mexico, but also people caravan up through South America. The northern border is porous in a lot of ways and it doesn't get the attention it deserves because the other thing they have to worry about is in the winter, people freeze to death while they're doing that.
Harry Lawrence says, wrong, Tim. Abe Lincoln suspended habeas corpus to send troops against the South and to arrest politicians without bail or trial. I don't know when I referenced that today. I referenced a corridor that was created between D.C. and through Maryland that where they had suspended habeas corpus. I don't think that is against what you are saying or otherwise.
I think that was yesterday, right? I was with Clint Russell.
Yeah.
Specifically
But-
talked about Abe yesterday.
I am not wrong. I just did not reference the suspension of habeas corpus to arrest politicians in Maryland, though we did talk about how he arrested the politicians in Maryland. I think it might have been like 26.
The
State
entire
reps?
legislature, yeah.
It wasn't the entire. It was the Confederate sympathizers.
Right.
So it was like
But
26 of them.
Yeah, but it was like 90% or
No,
something.
no. I think it was like a third.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was smaller, but we can fact check. You wanna pull it
Yeah.
up?
How many members of Congress that he arrested?
No,
It was the Maryland legislature.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln
started
arrested
discussing-
Maryland legislature. James Eaton says, arm your drones, be your own backup. That doesn't work, unfortunately. There are certain kinds of drones that they've equipped with certain kinds of weapons, but your typical consumer grade drone will just fall out of the sky if it actually tried to fire a weapon.
Community is your best defense against tyranny.
Your neighbors. Your neighbors. The Emperor's Champion says, Tim is right. People will organize in small cells all over the U.S. Same thing happened in Syria. Our civil war was very unique. But none of what I'm saying is hypothetical. Antifa has already done this. Antifa has already organized cells all across the country that work independent of each other. And it's a standalone complex. The Antifa people in Seattle don't organize with the people in Texas. But when they hear in the news that something is happening in Atlanta, they all descend knowing that they can interoperate. Then you have the roving gangs that have looted cities across the country. You already have people who don't believe law enforcement exists, and so they go and do whatever they want. There's that video from Home Depot where the guy is stealing, and then the other guys are yelling at him saying, put it back, and he goes, you can't touch me. And so they beat the crap out of him. Certainly, this is what happens. You have a guy saying, cops can't do anything about it, I can do whatever I want, and then locals just say, we'll do it ourselves. So all of these things are already happening. Let's go. Let's grab some more super chats. What do we have? The Quartering says, I tried finding this stream on Rumble. Something must be wrong. Let your IT guy know. I'm live there at 5:30 Eastern time before Tim, Monday through Friday. Shout out to the Quartering. Thanks for super chat.
Case.
He's got a show before ours. You can watch the Quartering and then you can come watch Timcast IRL. And then you know what we should do? We should do that thing that they used to do on CNN.
Where you hand it off?
Yeah, they hand off. That'd be fun. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for calling in. What was going on your show?
Yeah, they still do that on Fox, and it's always awkward. It's awkward every single time.
They've had so long to perfect this, and yet they can't.
Yeah. Eric Miller says, Battle of Athens. World War II vets overthrew a local government.
I've heard a lot about that, but I don't know a lot about
They
it.
came back from World War II to find that corrupt people took over, so they were like, nope.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. All right. Bodan says, and Roger said, get your filthy hands off my desert. Who gets the reference?
I
Not
don't.
me.
I don't.
I've never gotten a reference ever in my life, unfortunately.
Keep your hands on my filthy desert. Is that like a
don't know.
Dune reference? I
Maybe.
didn't see the new one. I think there were 17 members of the Maryland State Legislature that were arrested.
17?
I'm trying to count name by name. Yeah. I actually had the article from 1861 about it.
Oh, look at that. What do we have here? Let's see. Brand Loire says, longtime viewer here. This is kind of off topic, but I was just wondering what class and race Tim and Ian main in Baldur's Gate 3. I'm a dwarf enjoyer. Also, make a gold dwarf barb with athlete and tough feats, and you'll be a jumping tank. I'm sorry, sir, but I have probably done 76 run-throughs, so there is no main. I've played every single character there is to be played.
I'm an elven wizard, personally.
But I've played
That's
it so
my
many times.
go-to.
The first character I did was a rogue. It was an elf rogue. No, half-elf rogue.
Yeah.
Half-elf. Because, I'm mixed race, so I thought it was appropriate that we did that when we played D&D.
Yeah, you were quarter elf, I think, when we played before.
She can cross class.
So, but the first time I played, I didn't multi-class anything, and I just played rogue, and I played way wrong. And I was like, I don't know, but I won.
I gotta apologize. I played as an elven sorcerer. I went charisma. I normally play as a wizard, but as the years have progressed, I've gone more charisma based.
Right now, I'm doing a tavern brawler monk.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, so I dropped all the stats and then cranked strength and dexterity way up. Yeah. Because Tavern Brawler is a feat for your character in the game where your attack rolls and your damage rolls get a strength buff ×2. So you always land your hits and they always get a massive damage modifier. And then you go Way of the Open Palm, I think it is, or Way of the Open Hand or whatever.
Yeah.
So you can add extra damage, then you get the Sparkle Hands, or you get one of the Elemental Gloves, and then it's just an insane amount of damage. You can get I think you can get 4 attacks off your bonus actions. So you get 6 attacks per turn, plus with the fighter, if you multi-class fighter, I think just 2 levels. Then you get Action Surge, and you can add an additional 2. And then with level 9 Monk, you get Key Resonating Punch.
Dude,
or whatever.
Monks are so good. Diamond Body, Diamond Soul, immune to poison. I don't know about 5th edition, but Monks. What's your main guy?
I never played Baldur's Gate 3. I played 1 and 2, and I always just create parties. I always create like all 6 characters and try to have them all.
I played as a fighter mage thief in Baldur's Gate 2. After I beat it, I went back and just played as a solo character, get the boots of speed.
Yeah.
Man, you tear through that game.
That's
all right, we'll
one of the
grab
best games ever made.
It is. And with the sequel, or not the sequel, but the expansion.
Throwing
Throwing
a ball.
Volume.
Yeah.
We'll grab the one more super chat. Tavros says, everyone forgets about Wyoming, but if something was to happen, they have a massive jackpot of resources. They just came out saying they found the world's biggest rare earth mineral deposits there.
In Wyoming?
All right, there we go. Wyoming.
I think about Wyoming semi-regularly, and I don't know why this is, other than maybe some sort of prepper streak, but there have been like some really interesting true crime podcasts that are based out of Wyoming, a lot of really good hiking videos. They're always shot in Wyoming. Like, I don't know, maybe
They have
that's
good
where I'm destined.
cryptocurrency laws.
Yeah, they did want to become the cryptocurrency capital of the U.S. for a while, which I thought was really interesting.
All right, everybody, we're going to head over to timcast.com for that members-only show. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click join us if you'd like to watch that members-only show. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Harrison, do you want to shout anything out?
Sure, yeah. Just follow me on Twitter at Harrison H. Smith and American Journal each and every weekday morning. Infowars.com/show. Infowarsstore.com is the only way we get funding. So go there and get X3. It's on sale right now. Try iodine.
Cool. It's been fun having you here. I'm grateful to have you in studio today. I'm Hannah Claire Brimley. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. You can follow our work at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram at HannahClaire.b, and I'm on Twitter at HCBrimlow, guys. Thank you so much for all your support. Ian, it's so fun to see you again.
Oh, thanks, man.
I feel like you were gone for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, like 10 days this last time or something like that. Good to see
You
you
hate
again.
us, so you're breaking up with us?
Yeah, no. Hey, that was good talking about the power of the federal government. Having that debate earlier, it was tough to get into us segment because it's like a really deep, but that was really good. We should do that more often. Really good to see you, dude. Finally do a show together.
Yeah, this is fun.
Awesome.
You were gone last time I was here.
Yeah,
So.
welcome back. And I'm Ian Crossland, so follow me on the internet all over the place. Go to Tobuscus's YouTube channel, check out the parody, and let me know what you think about it. I want to know. Bye.
I'm Serge.com. I'm excited for the after show. See you guys there.
We will see you all over at timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out.